Current Storm Center live here at the Weather Network. My name is Kim McDonald. Glad to have you along. We have a line of storms that is headed towards the Ontario border. It's been impacting the U.S., Michigan as we speak. A couple of rogue storms have popped up ahead of the main line. One of them moved through Niagara around the Port Colborne area a little while ago, brought some heavy rainfall there. And we've had a storm that is moving into the Sarnia Petrolia area that is mainly a hail maker. But the biggest risk with these storms, especially later in the day, are the winds. So we're expecting winds 100+ kilometers per hour potentially. I just want to show you quickly what that could mean. So this goes through the gamut of wind speeds and what you would expect. So 60 to 74, branches break off, vehicles veer off the road. 75 to 88, light structural damage, and 88 to 100+, which we anticipate with some of these storms rolling through. Trees uprooted, major structural damage. So if you're in the area that has the severe thunderstorm watch, which is a good chunk of southern Ontario, this is the time that you're going to want to make sure that any objects outside around your house are secure. Anything you might want to be concerned about because of the strong winds that are headed your way, this is the time, because you still have a couple of hours for some of you, not so much for others if you're in southwestern Ontario. Here's our risk map for the remainder of the afternoon into the evening and even overnight for some, but any areas in red are the areas that we're most concerned about, and not just wind, but in southwestern Ontario, the potential for tornadoes is there as well. And with that being said, I'm going to bring in our meteorologist, Kevin McKay. Unless we can talk to Mark Robinson too, and we'll get to him as well because he is in the area that is currently seeing those storms. Kevin, what a setup for today, and we've seen it the last couple of days coming, and we kind of knew what to expect with this, but there's still some variables.
Yeah, it's not very often we have this much confidence and this much energy getting into southern Ontario. We're well over 3,000 joules a cape, and to put that into perspective, you only need about 1,500 to get a half-decent thunderstorm. So that is what this line of storms is going to be feeding on over the next few hours. This is a look at the energy as well as our satellites. So that's the line of storms already coming through Michigan. The top edge of those clouds already covering Sarnia, Windsor, Chatham, heading towards London. And Kim, like you were just saying, those first storms already making their way into Sarnia. We actually had a cool situation. I was talking to Michael Carter here, who's kind of our severe weather guru, and he was looking at these storms that just moved into Sarnia, and they actually split as they came up the interstate right towards Sarnia. So there is good and bad news with that. The good news, it's a sign that there's more shear than is respectable for the tornado potential. So it's more of a hail threat, like you were saying, Kim, but these will also start to get gobbled up by that main line of storms that's still making its way across I-94 through Flint, and it's just a matter of let's say 20 minutes before all of Lake St. Clair is going to be under this line, and a little longer for Windsor. You're a little further down the line, but this is going to be a potent line of storms, especially for those straight line winds through the evening.
You know, the Storm Prediction Center stateside had put out a few of these maps, risk map, early in the day, and they don't really cross into Canada all that often. Of course, they want to stay stateside, but we can see some of those areas of enhanced convective activity are on this side of the border, at least right around the Detroit-Windsor area. And that's exactly the same spot where they have their risk for tornadoes. So a couple of areas in southwestern Ontario, that's where we're concerned about the potential for rotation. And just a little reminder, tornado safety, where do you want to be? Somebody was tweeting me today asking, okay, so what if we live on the second floor and we don't have a basement to go to? I always talk about an interior room. I mean, get into a bathroom. If you don't have a basement, get to the lowest floor that you can. Get into a bathroom, maybe even a bathtub, a closet, anywhere where there's a lot of wall structure around you and fewer windows. That's the last thing you want. You don't want to be looking out at this out of a window, because breaking glass, flying debris, That's always a huge risk when it comes to tornadoes. If we do have them, it's best to know now what to do rather than getting into a panic situation where a tornado warning has been issued and you're not sure where you should be. You certainly shouldn't be out driving if you can avoid doing that. And then again, this is the hail outlook. So we're talking about this, they're saying in the US 2.5 inches. So huge hail. Our body, which is Environment and Climate Change Canada, are saying up to golf ball sized hail potential. And when we're looking at hail on radar, we're looking for pink to black, indicates extremely heavy precipitation, and that usually points to hail. So when we get into those pink colors, and I know that Kevin was just showing this, how much energy is in the atmosphere. We're talking about CAPE. It's a key ingredient when it comes to severe thunderstorms, and we have that in spades through the afternoon and evening. And again, there's my extra tornado warning. Take shelter in a basement if you can. No tornado warnings right now, so that's good news, but there is the potential today, and that's why we're talking about this now. People also said, well, if this is straight line winds, if we're talking about a line of storms, could it be a derecho? That's something that is not determined until after the fact. Kind of like, well, how strong was this tornado? They figure it out after the fact. So it's not something you can predict, but a line of straight line winds, certainly, and powerful winds at that. We have Mark Robinson, our storm hunter, on these storms. No surprise. I'm going to go to him now. He's been in Petrolia. It sounds pretty noisy out there, Mark. Oh, there he is.
Hi, Kim. Yeah, I don't know if you can actually see me, but I want you to take a look. You are looking directly into the rotating part of the storm. So that back there is a wall cloud. Got a beautiful, gigantic core, gigantic hail in there likely, but right there, that is the business end of the storm. That's the dangerous part of the storm. That's the rotation. I can see a solid wall cloud on this. And this one is ahead of the line. So this is the one that could get, that's that little isolated one that could be producing something, a little more dangerous than just straight line winds, because we could actually have that tornadic potential. And these are the storms that it would be on. And this one is actually turning right just a little bit. And this is the one I'm going to be following for a while, because this one definitely has the hallmarks of being a dangerous storm.
Now, so they have been issued for Windsor, Leamington, Essex County, Chatham, Kent, Rondo Park, Watford, Pinery Park. If you know anybody who's camping, let them know. Eastern Lambton County, Sarnia, Petrolia, where Mark is, Western Lambton County. So all of those areas are currently under a severe thunderstorm warning. And then we've got another spot for them as well, and that is Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and Northern Grey County. So another severe thunderstorm warning where a storm has just popped up recently as well. And we'll go out to Mark in just a moment, but now I'm going to bring Kevin McKay back in. So the severe thunderstorm warnings are starting to pop, no surprise, and we'll likely see them continue.
Yeah, let's do a little tour of all those areas that you just mentioned, Kim. Let's start on the one down near Sarnia. Mark's right, that cell that he's looking at right now, it is starting to get a little bit of a right kind of tendency to it. It's that cell just to the south of Sarnia, north of Marine City. Right now, there aren't any signs of rotation on radar, so that is promising, but definitely signs of hail. We do have a cool little product here. This is all radar derived as well. This just shows the hail swaths as those cells have been moving through, and those cells moving into Sarnia, there's a few of them that have been producing hail. This is just over the last hour or so. Now, Owen Sound, let's hop up to Owen Sound, see what's going on there. We actually had a few cells just on top of the escarpment. So Chatsworth down to Markdale, Highway 6 and 10. These will just start to drift off towards Georgian Bay. Not too worried about them. They're not too slow moving. It's just some maybe some small hail, but also some torrential rain there. That's going to stay just to the south of Owen Sound. And also one area is going to be this cell just south of Muskoka and Gravenhurst. It has been warned as well, just heading out of radar range. This is from Exeter, so I can just switch over. Just stay with me for a second here. There we go. So that is a look at the cells going up through Muskoka. So just that one cell towards Gravenhurst, that's the one that's currently warned. It's now there aren't too many major lakes on the east side of Highway 11 and north of Head Lake. So this line will be heading towards Minden, Dorset, and along 35. So at this point, the cloud tops are pretty impressive. So I think most people at the cottages will take that as a sign to get off the water over the next probably hour or so. But just going back to the main line at hand down towards Sarnia. Kim, we were also mentioning before we came on air here, there's going to be some pretty impressive storms coming on shore of Lake Huron. So Sauville Beach, Southampton, Kincardine, Goderich. Hopefully people can get some good shots, maybe some videos of those storms before you head inside and they come on shore.
That's the thing. You can see them across the lake coming for kilometers, hundreds of kilometers potentially, and it's safe. But, you know, once they get close, you need to get indoors with a lot of lightning on these storms, as we can see with this particular radar. All this white, those are lightning strikes. So it just shows you how dangerous these storms can be. And I always say that despite you may not be in a severe thunderstorm warning, maybe you're in a watch, maybe it's a garden variety thunderstorm, but most thunderstorms do include lightning, and they are the most dangerous part of a thunderstorm. So severe thunderstorm warning or not. But Environment Climate Change Canada talking about the size of hail in some of these warnings, including the ones around Windsor, Chatham-Kent, Watford, Sarnia, saying that the main hazard is golf ball sized hail, 100 kilometers per hour winds, and then of course the potential for tornadoes, which we're looking out for. If a tornado is spotted, it's usually spotted by either a trained storm spotter or it is seen on radar by forecasters or meteorologists. So if there are indications on radar that there could be some rotation, then a tornado warning is issued. So it's usually one of those things that could be last minute. So if you're under the severe thunderstorm warning, just be aware that any severe thunderstorm severe thunderstorm could potentially create a tornado. So just keep that in mind. So nickel to quarter size hail, that's the other area that we're seeing potential hail. Areas like Meaford, Feversham, Craigleith, Provincial Park, Pretty River Valley. These areas could see nickel-sized hail. Any way you look at it, this hail is damaging, but golf ball-sized hail would be the most damaging in these areas. So again, those are our warnings. We're talking about very strong winds. This is just the very beginning. A lot of these storms are out ahead of the main line of storms. This is broken down in 3 colors. So the best chance for severe, moderate chance of severe, and the least chance of severe in yellow. So thunderstorms could continue into the early morning hours, late night, early morning hours. If you're in Ottawa or Montreal, that's when you have the better chance of seeing these storms. But for southwestern Ontario, you're in the red, and that's where we're most concerned, those storms coming off of Lake Huron. But again, around Georgian Bay, this is prime vacation time. So people are camping, they're at their cottages. Hopefully you have good Wi-Fi wherever you go. We always encourage you to have the Weather Network app on your cell phone, and even if you don't, you'll still get the alerts as long as you have some kind of internet connection. So you may want to shut off from the rest of the world, but at least be aware of the weather. Maybe it's looking at the radar, maybe it's just knowing if there are watches or warnings issued. And again, this is the stateside SPC convective outlook, so the Storm Prediction Center, and all around Lake Erie and around the St. Clair River, we're talking about the potential for severe weather, even tornadoes. I have Mark Robinson. I see him in my preview, and it looks like he's taking a shot there. Hi, Mark. Where are you exactly? And you're in Petrolia, or have you moved?
Yeah, I'm just to the west of Petrolia. I'm looking right into the main rotation on this cell. It's hard to say for sure exactly where the rotation is. It's a little messier than I'd like to. There's so much lightning, it's crazy. But it's just green. I can see the core of it just all over in this area. That's the core there. You can see, okay, so you can just see right in here, there's what looks to be a bit of a laminar little tube. Okay, the hair on the back of my hands is standing up, so I'm going to get back in the car because it's spectacularly dangerous when it comes to lightning. But I think it's trying to put, there looks like there's a little bit of a funnel. I'm going to zoom up on that right now, and you can kind of get an idea right in there. That's definitely a spot where we're seeing, I'm seeing a little bit of, I'm honestly not sure exactly because there's not a strong rotation. And I know that these storms are a bit messy and they're kind of all over the place right now. But definitely, these are one of the more dangerous storms I've seen in southern Ontario so far this year. So if you are in, Petrolia, Oil Springs, Oil City, all those areas, this is coming straight towards you, and these are nasty storms. Yeah, and I've got a potential, rotation area just south of me. So I am going to have to get going right now so that this thing doesn't, roll right over me with a tornado.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Yeah, we want you to stay safe in these storms. This is the severe thunderstorm warned area where he is right now, and it's starting to spread now all the way down to Lake Erie. So yes, Windsor and Sarnia both in this specific severe thunderstorm warning, but also areas north towards Georgian Bay. There's a cell that's popped up here. So this is all ahead of the main line of storms that are still in Michigan but are going to be crossing the border. I'm going to go now to meteorologist Kevin McKay, who can break this down further for us. Kevin, I got a little nervous there when Mark's talking about feeling the electricity and the hair on the back of his hand starting to stand up. So I'm like, yep, time to get inside.
He also just has really hairy arms, so
Okay,
you got to take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's still the cell to have the most attention and respect right now. This is an interesting one down near Essex, though. A couple cells have popped up just at kind of the mouth of the Detroit River. You can see just south of Trenton there. That's only that's about 40 minutes ago, and then they're not going to be long lasting if the lake breeze is the only trigger for them. But then you can see just to the southwest of Trenton again, there's another one that's going to go right over the same area. So we could be looking at maybe a couple quick training storms, but those ones can also provide some sneaky rotation as well, just thanks to the convergence of the lake breeze, because you do get you're going to have generally that line of storms is going to be moving more so due east. But if you get that lake breeze coming off of Erie, and then even Lake St. Clair can develop a little bit of a lake breeze as well, you're going to have all three of those wind directions kind of battling out at the surface, and then aloft the main wind direction is right out of the southeast. So as those storms start to build and they get up into that shear development, that is where we can see at least some brief rotation, nothing long lasting, but we still have to put a lot of attention along these cells right along that cold front. And yeah, Kim, it looks like we have our first tornado warning of the afternoon.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly where Mark was standing or around there. So the severe thunderstorm warning has been upgraded to a tornado warning for Sarnia, Petrolia, and western Lambton counties. So it's exactly that spot where Mark was looking at the sky and saying, okay, looks like there's some rotation on here. Still a little bit weak rotation, but something could be developing, and a dangerous storm no matter how you look at it. So the exact kind of spot that was under the severe thunderstorm warning there, it's just popping up on my screen. It's hard to see with all the lightning here, but the area in pink or purple, that's the region right now currently under a tornado warning. So you're going to want to get to somewhere safe if you are in the areas, Sarnia, Petrolia, as well as western Lambton County. And again, with these storms, expect powerful winds, hail, heavy downpours, and with rotation and a tornado, we can cause some serious damage depending on the strength of it and if it actually is a tornado. But you get some rotation on a storm like this, and you don't want to take any chances. It's not like you can put a warning on a tornado hours ahead of time. It's not going to happen. They come like this. They come out of a rotating severe thunderstorm or a supercell traditionally, but they can form in other ways as well. But these are the areas, again, right now under the tornado warning: Sarnia, Petrolia, and western Lambton County. And if you are in these areas, you're going to want to take precaution, get into an interior room if you have one, and especially if you think for sure that this is a big storm coming your way, you're going to want to be indoors regardless. Okay, Kevin, you were looking at this too. This is exactly the kind of storm that we want to have our storm hunters' eyes on, but we don't want him to be in the middle of. So it's good that he jumped in his car to take off from the spot that he was standing in, but it got it got a little tense there for a moment.
Yeah, and when Mark said that it's looking pretty nasty just to his south, that's not what you want to hear when you're tracking a supercell, because yes, that the south side of the storm is going to be where you see any tornado potential, but the north side of the storm is where you're going to have the largest hail. So that's what Mark wants to avoid, so I'm going to expect him to head to the south and the east. Because if you are going to have any vantage point of a tornado, you got to get away from all the rain that will be impeding that. So here's a look. Again, just over the last half hour, this cell's really taken form over the Ontario side of the border, still to the west of Petrolia and Wyoming. But if we're gonna have any area to focus, it's going to be right down in here. So well to the south of Sarnia. Yes, Sarnia, you're included in the tornado warning, and you're still going to get a great wallop from likely the straight line winds from this entire line coming across the river, but you're not in the crosshairs for what has triggered this tornado warning. Now, the general track of this cell has been kind of east-northeast, but if it does continue to trend this way and get stronger rotation, it does actually have a little bit of a tendency to curve right. So we'll see it kind of head a little south of that initial track through Peoria. And there's a lot that can change within 5 minutes, let alone half an hour. So at this time, we can't really pace out these storms as to how they're going to be interacting for Strathroy, London, and even down along the 401. But yeah, south of Lake St. Clair, we have, this is actually our initial cell that developed along that lake breeze that we were just looking at, and it has continued to feed pretty well. There's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, so it can kind of be the leech that's going to be out ahead of the main line of storms. So you often see like the main shark, and then you have those little fish that kind of just hang out with it. That's the line of storms. That is going to be the shark. But these guys, they can kind of rob some of that food from the main line before the shark eats that. So we're going to see these cells head towards Tilbury and Chatham before they get caught by the line of storms. So these will be good for maybe a quick 20-30 millimeters of rain and a whole lot of lightning and some acceptable hail, but not likely going to be having that golf ball size hail that Environment Canada has been hinting towards. That threat will be with the stronger storms within that main line.
Moving at about 40 kilometers per hour to the east, and I want to name some of the smaller towns because Environment and Climate Change Canada did include all of them, the areas that may be in the path of this or potential tornado. So they did have Sarnia, the village of Point Edward, Old South, Woodrow Shores, Woodrow Beach, Woodland, Downtown Central, West Beach, Oak Acres, High Park, Coronation Park, Oakwood Corners, Wiltshire Park, Cardiff Acres, Wiltshire, Sherwood Village, Twin Lakes, Blackwell, rural Sarnia, and Brights Grove, Stony Creek. So if you're hearing Stony Creek, this is the area we're talking about, not the Stony Creek that is near Hamilton. So those are the specific areas. Now they did, Kevin, say golf ball size hail and 110 kilometer per hour wind gusts, but that is a prediction and not exactly what could happen, but those would be the highest risks with this particular tornado warning for the Sarnia, Petrolia, and West Lambton area. Here's another look at the storms moving into Ontario. You can barely see where the warning is because of all of the lightning on these storms, and I'm hoping that you are keeping your power on as these storms move through, because we're talking about lightning and gusty winds, and this is the kind of storm that can obviously lead to power outages. Now, if you have not lost your power with this line of storms that will be impacting millions of Ontarians through the afternoon and evening likely. Not everyone would see rotation, but certainly those damaging winds. Now is the time to prepare for a potential of losing your power. If you're in that tornado warning, tornado safety, again, take shelter in a basement or the lowest level possible. Go to an interior room or closet or hallway. Get under a sturdy piece of furniture. Grab blankets if you have to. This was our risk map that we put together. It's coming to fruition. The darkest red means the best potential for severe weather. The orange means a decent potential, so a moderate potential for severe weather. And then in yellow, the risk is there. It's not as high for severe weather, but certainly you could see pop-up thunderstorms through the late night hours. And that's part of the ingredient, is that if it's happening late at night, you lose some of the energy of the day, and the severe storms tend to be a little less severe at that point in time. But a widespread area still could see thunderstorms late Thursday night into Friday morning. Could be a late night for some, especially if you can't sleep in thunderstorms or you've got a dog maybe cowering under the bed. Here was the SPC convective outlook. Again, we're talking about the potential for tornadoes. Right now we do have that tornado warning. I'm going to bring it back to that tornado warning. I'm going to go back through all my maps here. And again, here we go. So there's our tornado warning. Sarnia, Petrolia, West Lambton County. Here's what you do in a tornado warning.
Well, Canada, every single year we see dozens of tornadoes in this country. We might not be Tornado Alley, but they can occur from British Columbia all the way to Atlantic Canada, with most of them in the prairies and Ontario. But what happens? Let's walk you through a hypothetical tornadic situation. Environment Canada will normally issue a tornado watch with the potential for severe thunderstorms with at least one or more tornadoes to develop. Now, a tornado warning is different. I'm sure you've heard this sound before. That's a cue action is required. A tornado warning is when a tornado has been reported or visually seen by a certified storm spotter. So these are red flags to take action. So I picked a hypothetical warning area by Environment Canada and looked at past tracks from 1980 to 2009. Although a whole polygon, a whole warning region gets issued a tornado warning, damage is very, very rare and confined to generally under 500 meters in diameter. So it's why you wear a seatbelt every time you get in a car. You use the precautionary principle, because these F4 and F3 tornadoes from 1985, for example, are deadly and can have severe consequences. So if you have a basement, go to that region. But I'm using a simulation here in a household that does not have a basement. Get away from windows and walls, exterior walls. Go to an interior room like a closet or bathroom. Throw anything over yourself like a mattress and take cover. That's the safest place to be when a tornado is imminent.
And we're showing that because, of course, there is a tornado warning right now in southwestern Ontario. Specifically, the Sarnia, Petrolia, and West Lambton areas are now under a tornado warning and have been for the last little while. The latest statement from ECCC saying that, again, the possibility of golf ball-sized hail and 120 kilometer per hour wind gusts. So they've upped the wind gusts from 110 to 120. That's really one of the biggest risks with these storms. Regardless if there's rotation on them, they're going to be very windy. A line of storms that are set up and moving towards Ontario right now, but again, some spin on them down towards the Sarnia area. We saw some thunderstorms pop up around Georgian Bay as well. There's going to be a mass population impacted by these storms. Not necessarily everybody in a tornado warning, certainly, but severe thunderstorms at the very least, and some strong wind gusts as these storms move through, and hail as well. A lot of people talking about the hail potential on these storms. It's a perfect summer setup for a day like this. I'm going to go to Kevin McKay now. It's hot. We've got the moisture in the atmosphere, a cold front coming through. I mean, it's textbook.
Yeah, and it's that energy that's really going to be the cause for these strong, strong winds. So that's what I want to look at, because up that wind risk to 120 kilometers per hour, especially for the cell that's right over Sarnia. So yes, Sarnia, you are in the tornado warning, but those bright reds, that's a look at the velocity, and that's actually showing signs of about 120, 130 kilometer an hour winds. Now the that's not showing the strength of the wind at the surface, because this is getting measured right in that little spot down in Michigan. And as the beam goes away from the radar, it actually goes higher into the sky. So that's actually at about 2 kilometers above the ground. Now, on our side of the border, we have Exeter radar, which is up near Grand Bend, and it is only about 1.5 kilometers above the ground. So both radars are a good distance from Sarnia, so neither is giving a really good representation of what's happening at the surface, but nonetheless, that is what has kind of triggered that upgrading of the wind threat for Sarnia. And again, right now, it's right over the city. It's going to track right down the 402, so this could be pretty dangerous for any empty transports that are going along the 402, and not to ignore that line of red that's starting to spark up right along the shoreline towards Grand Bend. So the Pinery, hopefully everyone's not in their tent. Hopefully they're either in their vehicles or in town or in the comfort stations as this line goes through. They've definitely had some bad experiences in that park over the last few years. But this cell also popping up right over London. It's like the 402 and the 401 were the convergence, but that's just coincidentally the exact distance between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. So let's pull up to our current timestamp there. So yeah, so this cell is also going to be a lake breeze storm, thanks to our Lake Erie winds and our Georgian Bay winds, our Lake Huron winds. And this cell will eventually also get gobbled up by the main line back towards the southwest. But this cell is going to be moving pretty slowly, kind of up towards Woodstock and maybe even Stratford, St. Mary's. So we'll watch the progression of that one. That one could have some impressive flooding on it as well. But still, it's looking like the straight line winds will be the main concern, even though we do have that one tornado warning still in place for the cell just to the south of the 402. Sarnia, Kim, you're saying, is still under the tornado warning, but it isn't in direct threat. Before I go back to you, Kim, these two cells that we've been looking at south of Lake St. Clair, let's see how they've been doing over the last half hour or so. Really not dying out as well as I was expecting, at least that first one. That's now kind of on the shores near Tilbury. That one, just in the next 15 minutes or so, it's going to get gobbled up by the main line kind of approaching. But this kind of messy guy down towards the Erie shores, it will also get gobbled up. It's just, what does it do in the meantime? We can have a look at the velocity, since it is much closer to the radar in Detroit. Let's have just a quick look to see if there's any signs of any rotation on that guy. Honestly, there's maybe a little slight hint of that one, so I won't be surprised if they're keeping a close eye on that one. But we do have an update to the tornado warning. Does it include this cell, Kim?
It includes the one now, but you were mentioning earlier about Pinery Park. So Watford, Pinery Park, and Eastern Lambton County. I know you were talking about the Pinery, and I have been at the Pinery when there was a tornado warning. And in places like provincial parks and national parks, they usually have a solid structure that you can get to. At the Pinery, they had one of those as well that I did get to. But yeah, so far it's just Watford, Pinery Park, Eastern Lambton County, and then Sarnia, Petrolia, and Western Lambton County. So those are the two cells that are currently tornado warned. We have Mark Robinson, our storm hunter. I know that the connection is a little bit dicey, but we can see what we can get here with Mark. Mark, I see you on there. At least I see your shot. I don't know if we have a connection. Okay, we don't have him, but you can see his view nonetheless, and he is in the Petrolia area. I'm getting another piece of paper here, so let's find out what we've got. Okay, so I guess just getting more into the specifics of those same areas that are under the tornado warning, which are, again, Sarnia, Petrolia, Western Lambton County. Now, Eastern Lambton County is in it, Watford, and Pinery Park. So it said at 4:18 p.m., Environment Canada meteorologists tracking a severe thunderstorm that is located, possibly producing a tornado, which is what they usually put at the top of the the outlook here, and then hazard tornado, 120 kilometer per hour wind gust, golf ball sized hail. Locations impacted include Watford, Kamlachie, Wyoming, Reese's Corners, Warwick, Bunyan, Mandomin. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing anything incorrectly, but I'm just reading this cold right now. Aber-Arder, Wanstead, Kirch, and Otto Exeter are all in this. Otto Exeter, yeah, that's right. Okay, so these are the areas that may be impacted by this second cell, the second rotating storm. So we've got two here, one just north of Sarnia, one south of Petrolia. These are the regions we're watching, but there are storms popping up all over Ontario right now, and we continue to see those severe thunderstorm warnings spread out and move east, just like this line of storms is doing. And again, if you're in a warned area, certainly a severe thunderstorm warning, it means that that storm is imminent or on your doorstep. So that's the time to get in. A watch, like this entire area has been under a watch for hours now since this morning, letting you know that we had the ingredients for the potential of severe weather today, and obviously that's coming to fruition. So severe thunderstorm warnings tend to come and go. They will be dropped once the storm moves through, unless there's more storms behind it. But right now we're looking at not only severe thunderstorm watches and warnings, but obviously a tornado warning as well, which are the areas that we're most concerned about around the Sarnia, Petrolia, Pinery Park area.
So Kim, yeah, I was just having a look at my side screen here of a different source of velocity. This one cell that Mark was initially following, I'm just gonna get the latest scan here. There is some. I would even go to the point of saying there is almost imminently a tornado on the ground near Petrolia. I'm trying to get maybe some location names on there. But at this point, yeah, it's just south of Petrolia. That is where we're focusing right now. We are going to see if hopefully Mark, that is why we can't get a hold of him right now. Hopefully he is getting in a safe but also productive location on the south side of that cell. So this is a look at our velocity and what we're looking at that's most important. We have the greens and the reds. It's all you need to worry about on a velocity map. And when you see the bright reds, like we're seeing a line of there, that is a straight line wind. When it's red and it's bright, that means it's strong and it's going away from the radar. So that is all straight line winds. But once we get up to just our latest scan here, no, it hasn't even populated on our system here quite yet. But that
and Kevin, I just wanted to jump in just for 1 second because there was a line in the warning that I missed, and it's one of the most important ones, which was that extensive damage has been reported in Sarnia. So already these storms, worse than, what we thought this early in the day, but certainly extensive damage in Sarnia is not what we want to hear. But this is why we are live, and this is why we are telling people to get indoors and obviously if you're not in any warning right now, but you're in the watch, you might want to secure, again, anything around the house that may blow away or that may cause damage, and to stay indoors if you can. Please don't drive if you are planning on going somewhere and you think these storms are getting closer to where you are. Try not to outrun them, because if these winds are causing already extensive damage this early, then it's going to likely continue over the next few hours. Sorry to interrupt, Kevin. I just wanted to say that part of it, because just to hit home what is already going on this early in the afternoon.
What we were looking at for Sarnia. Now Sarnia, yes, you can get some pretty widespread incredible damage from straight line winds, so that's what we've likely seen in Sarnia. But along the leading edge, we just got the newest scan on this other source of information that we have. We're still we're almost about 10 minutes behind on what we have in our system, and it's just these last two scans that we're waiting on that are the two that are showing the best sign of a tornado right on this guy just to the south. You're seeing a little bit of a hint of green there in a few of those pixels. That's a sign that the wind direction on these guys is actually going towards the radar again, which is back towards Detroit. But when you have the reds, they're going that way. So when you have two colors representing opposite directions really close to each other, that means you have rotation. Again, there is some very impressive rotation just to the south of Petrolia. That is right in the tornado warning. That is what has definitely triggered the tornado warning, and that was our initial one. But that's not the only concern. That line of strong straight line winds is stretching all the way from the Huron shores down to the north shore of Lake St. Clair, and then even south of that. Still that cell, this is a little confusing now with the velocity, but if I go back to just the radar, this is what everyone's used to looking at. That cell that we saw, again, pop up right along the sea breeze here, or the lake breeze, that is where we are now seeing some pretty impressive hail. But in the last scan, the rotation not looking quite as impressive on the south side of Windsor. But Windsor itself, you're now going to start to get into some of those stronger straight line winds as well. So you might be in a similar boat as Sarnia in the coming minutes.
I think we have our storm hunter now on the line. Mark Robinson went down into the Petrolia area ahead of these storms, knowing that there was real potential for storms to develop and these strong winds to cause damage. Mark, tell me a little bit more about what you have seen. We're looking at your view right now. A lot of lightning. I see heavy rain as well, and you're out in a more rural location.
Yeah, just south of Oil Springs, Oil City area, headed up towards Petrolia. Kim, it was unbelievable how strong those winds were. I was hoping to stay ahead of the line, but the line hit me so fast that I couldn't get out in front. So I got stuck in the middle, hunkered down. Very, very strong straight line winds. One of the wildest things happened that I've had happen to me quite a while. I'm driving in one direction. There's another car coming at me. So I'm headed east. He's headed west. And the winds hit us, and it ripped a hay bale off the top of his car and smashed into mine. I actually have to check for damage for the front of my car when it hit. It just hit so fast. I've also seen multiple trees down. Power lines are down in and around the Oil Springs area. Definitely. These have definitely caused quite a bit of damage, and the line is very thick. So even though like the initial line has passed, it's still the winds are very strong, and I'm going up towards Petrolia to check to see if there is damage there in that area. But I can tell you this happened very, very fast.
Well, Mark, in the last warning that we got from Environment and Climate Change Canada, I'm hoping Mark can still hear me, but there is extensive damage in Sarnia reported, so you may want to see what is happening there. I know we just lost Mark. I'm hoping he gets that message though. But yes, so these storms are causing a lot of damage, not necessarily from rotation, but from those straight line winds, which are extremely powerful. But there are certainly a few areas where we have been seeing rotation, and that is the reason why Environment and Climate Change Canada issued the warnings for East and West Lambton County, for Sarnia, Petrolia, Watford, the Pinery Park as well. So look at this line of storms. This is all the lightning on these storms as well. We had earlier storms around Niagara. That was not a part of this exact line, but just a warning that these storms are popping up sometimes ahead of the line themselves. Okay, now let's go to, what is it again? What to do in case of a... Okay, this is good. Okay, so this is for if you are in your car and there is a tornado warning. A lot of people need to know what should they be doing. So here's the best advice.
Severe weather can strike at any time. There's typically only minutes, if not just seconds, to respond. So it's especially important to always know what you should and shouldn't do, no matter where you are.
If you find yourself driving on the road when severe weather strikes, it can actually be a very dangerous situation.
So what should you do? First up, you need to assess the situation for immediate danger. And when you're in a car, you likely only have a few options. The first and safest line of defense would be seeking somewhere indoors, centrally located, in a solid structure to ride out the storm.
But if a tornado is already too close, you're going to want to pull over, put your car in park, and leave your seatbelt on. Next, you'll want to duck as far below the line of windows as you can and cover your head.
It's important to keep your car running so the airbags will still work. They could provide you with some additional protection. Another option is to get out of your car and into a ditch. When you're below ground level, you'll have some shield from flying debris and winds. Remember, the most dangerous part of a tornado comes from flying debris.
Just make sure you get as far away from your car as possible so it doesn't roll on top of you. Next, you're going to want to lie down, face first, and cover your head with your arms.
You may also consider seeking shelter under a bridge or overpass, but not so fast. You could actually be making things worse.
While it may seem like you'll get more shelter in an overpass, it actually can create a more dangerous situation. The narrow space amplifies the already strong winds tornadoes bring. Any small debris could turn into a dangerous missile. Not to mention, you're blocking the roadway and you're putting drivers behind you at risk.
Remember these tips, share the knowledge with your family and friends, and who knows, it might just save a life this severe weather season.
Along the 402 or the 401 over the next hour or two, if you're thinking of hiding out under the overpasses, yes, it's going to save you from the hail, but it might make the winds a whole lot worse. Now, looking at this line of storms, a few things to look at. This is a very smooth edge along that yellow and that red, but when you look at the pockets of purple, that is where you have the best reflectivities. That's where you have the highest precipitation, the biggest hail, but also it's in these little nooks. That is where you're going to have any potential for embedded rotation. So this isn't a situation now where, for instance, if you have an isolated supercell like over towards London, where you'll be able to just look at the cell itself and see if it's rotating on its own. This is going to be one very long, it looks like just one continuous storm down over the horizon in southwestern Ontario, but within that you can get rotation. So that's what we're going to be looking for, and that is what we're seeing. The good news over the last scan of our velocity down around Petrolia, that is showing signs of weakening. So it's where you see those two colors converging, but still this bulge of red there. That is probably straight line winds over 90 or 100 kilometers per hour, but where they meet, that is where we've been watching for the potential for the rotation. That's why we have the tornado warning in place still at this time. And then let's go down towards Wallaceburg and Chatham. Just looking at the last couple scans there. So I think that might just be a little bit of a blip in the velocity. So not too worried about that impressive red signature there. And we've lost any signs of rotation down towards the Harrow area. But look at Windsor. You're now in the bulk of the brightest reds. That is all straight line winds, but that can be kind of widespread damage across the city instead of just kind of amalgamating that damage into severe damage in maybe one or two streets. So we'll continue to watch that line as it now makes its way across the 401. So we'll be keeping an eye on Tilbury, Essex, as well as Chatham over probably the next hour or so. But places like Chatham, you are going to be in an interesting situation because you're going to start to see these cells in the next 10-15 minutes. But then this, like Mark was saying, this is a very thick line, and if it still kind of moves, even if it moves due east, it could be over you for likely an hour. And if you're getting 50, 60, even 70 millimeters of rain per hour, this could quickly be flooding out streets and fields and ditches. So we'll keep an eye on the Chatham and Tilbury area.
You know, we've been hearing about damage in Sarnia with those straight line winds. This is the wind gust that was recorded in Sarnia, 117 kilometers per hour, by far the highest in these cities, 96 in Windsor. So some very strong winds there. We're talking about damage, trees down, etc., but also hail. London wasn't in any of these kinds of warnings, but London has seen huge, actually a severe thunderstorm warning in London, huge hail. I've been looking at Twitter and seeing people comparing it to toonie size, some large hail in the palm of your hand that can do some real damage. And you certainly don't want to be outdoors in a storm like this, but just showing you the wind gusts. I know that a storm just went through the Ottawa Valley as well, around the Pembroke area. I saw a snapshot of a shelf cloud there, but this is the storm line right now. Again, it's a massive area that's crossing a highly populated region of the province, not towards the Hamilton, Toronto, GTA area for a while. You don't have much to worry about just now, but further southwestern areas, further back, southwestern areas of the province really being impacted, and we continue to have those tornado warnings. No change yet to the warnings that I know of. Sarnia, Petrolia, Western Lambton County, Watford, Pine Creek Park, and Eastern Lambton County. Counties are huge, and so when Environment and Climate Change Canada has to issue a warning, they usually issue it for a much bigger land area than where the actual storm is. So it may encompass you and your community, but you may not get hit by it. But that's just how it's laid out. So just so you know that, it may say a particular city, but it's really in that county, in that area, and these storms can be very isolated in nature and very powerful too. So you just have to be weather aware, know what's happening where you are. It's great if you can read a radar, and if you're watching this, obviously you are on top of the weather and interested in what's going on. So watches, severe thunderstorm warnings, and yes, we still have a few tornado warnings as we speak. Kevin.
Yeah, and update on the cell moving through cottage country that had the warning for Gravenhurst and Bracebridge. It is now almost at 35. So Minden towards Haliburton. So Cashel-Wigamog and Gull Lake are going to take a direct hit from this cell. Not looking at winds similar to the Sarnia situation. This is a much smaller cell, so not quite as impactful. But another little note with that wind that Kim was just showing, the 117 in Sarnia, that is at the Sarnia airport. So that's not necessarily the strongest gust recorded across the city. That's just the one we get the data from right at the airport. So quite possible that you could probably add maybe another 5 or 10 kilometers per hour on top of that wind gust. So this is what we're looking at right now, anywhere south and west of Kitchener. You see, or London, that's where you had just that one isolated cell really spark up and take a lot of that fuel. And this is the most energy we've had in southwestern Ontario so far this season. So it's not even 5 o'clock yet. So we're kind of at peak daytime heating right now. So for the next couple of hours, that's when these storms are going to have the most fuel to feed on. Just going to shift towards our Exeter radar to see how this is shaping up along the Huron shores, because that one line of storms that's kind of south of the 402 towards Windsor, that is all going to be shifting more so towards Lake Erie over the next hour or so. So our main focus for anywhere kind of north and east of London and into the GTA, it's going to be what's going to happen kind of along the Huron shore. So right now there is a good split between Grand Bend and Kincardine. Now that can fill in quickly since that energy is encompassing all of southwestern Ontario. Once that line, just because there isn't a storm along that section at the moment, that cold front is still there. It just doesn't have anything to represent it. But it's still going to go into a whole lot of energy around Listowel and Kitchener, and that's where our elevation's highest, getting on top of that Dundalk Highlands, and as we get towards the escarpment. So that can change over the next couple of hours, and that's when we'll start to see how this is going to be impacting the GTA as we get through the evening. Good news is this isn't going to be impacting the evening commute by any means. So we'll continue to see how these storms are going to interact, and that one cluster that was warned around Owen Sound and Chatsworth, that is now impacting and chasing people off the beach in Wasaga and Collingwood. So we'll also keep an eye on that area because there is a triangle that I like to call from Midland, Barrie, Collingwood, where you get some very localized dynamics. You have the escarpment to one side, you have a lake breeze coming in off of Georgian Bay, you have a little bit of a lake breeze off of Lake Simcoe, and then you have some elevation in Oro Medonte. So you can get a whole lot of dynamics going on for storms that either initiate in that triangle or move into that triangle. So that is just another area that we're going to have to keep an eye on for the next hour or so.
I have a tweet here. We're going to bring it up full for you so you can see, but it's some of the tree damage. This was done in Sarnia. It's kind of difficult to see, but yes, indeed. So this is a tree down, or at least branches down in Sarnia. We were talking about the fact that Sarnia did have a lot of damage. That was actually in Environment and Climate Change Canada's last warning for the area. Now, not necessarily for tornado damage, but straight line wind damage. We've been talking about how strong the winds are with this storm. Kevin pointed out that the winds at the airport, because that's the official recording in Sarnia of 117 kilometers per hour, but in other areas around the city of Sarnia, they certainly could have gusted much higher than that. We're seeing some of the severe thunderstorm warnings drop behind this storm as it moves east, and that's how this happens. You'll get a watch in place letting you know that you need to have heads up through much of the day, and then the warning means that it is here. Severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, it could be imminent or happening, and that's the time you need to take action. And when it comes to tornadoes, there are some myths out there. Here is Rachel Modestino to clarify.
Are you safe from a tornado if you live in a city or by a lake? Do tornadoes truly not hit the same place twice?
Plenty of tornado myths surface every season. Here are 5 you should never believe. Number 5, a big city will protect you. While big cities can alter thunderstorm movement, they cannot always repel a strong tornado maker. Dozens of tornadoes have hit major cities such as Ottawa, Vancouver, New York, and even Washington, D.C.
Take shelter in the southwest corner of your basement. It was believed that this corner would allow us to avoid wind-blown debris, but the problem is, since the wind is not blowing in a straight line, it is impossible to predict the safest corner. It's best to shelter in a windowless room, like a closet, bathroom, or basement.
Number 3, an open window will equalize the pressure. This myth claims that by opening a window, you avoid a pressure bomb that can demolish the house. However, it's not the pressure that destroys the house, it's the wind.
By opening a window, the air from the tornado will enter like a whirlwind and will cause the most destruction.
Number 2, an underpass is a safe shelter. Although it seems logical, sheltering here can put you in more danger and could turn deadly. This acts as a wind tunnel. The wind gusts accelerate through the narrow space. If you see a tornado, stay in your car or get to a ditch for better shelter. Finally, the most popular belief, number 1, tornadoes can't strike the same place twice.
Don't trust this old saying. Tornadoes have no regard for the past and can form in the same place over and over again. For example, Barrie, Ontario was affected by 2 major tornadoes, the first in 1985 and the second most recently in July 2021.
Showing you a picture of some of the hail that came down in London. This is all over social media. I was looking at Twitter, just one photo after another. I know people get excited about hail until, of course, it hits your car and causes some damage. Nobody wants that. But these storms producing some pretty decent sized hail. This is a little bit smaller, but I mean, I don't know how big at Discovery Monk's hand is. I mean, it could be huge. I don't know. But anyway, so hail coming down, and we've been talking about those straight line winds and the kind of damage they've already done. In Sarnia, we've seen photos and videos of tree branches down. I'm not sure how extensive the damage is in Sarnia, but one of the areas that was under the tornado warning, but not necessarily tornado winds. So that's the thing, straight line winds, tornado winds. You can have powerful straight line winds that can cause just as much damage as a tornado, but the damage is just different. It just falls in a different way. Whereas, you might see tornado damage, everything is scattered in a circular motion. Straight line winds cause damage, but it's usually all one way because of how they're moving through. So here we go, a lot of lightning on these storms. Tornado warnings continue. I haven't seen any change in them yet. We're still talking about the Petrolia area, Lambton County, but for many of these areas, they're likely already out of the woods, but we can see that there's a ton of lightning on these storms, and that wind could cause some real issues. Hopefully you keep your power on, your lights on. Again, if you're in that tornado warning, you want to take shelter in a basement if you can, in an interior room, in a bathroom. That's always great as well. There's our risk map. Storms aren't over yet. This is going to be likely a long duration event. So we're talking about storms that will continue over the next few hours and even into the early morning hours farther east towards you in eastern Ontario and across the border into Quebec, although we're not expecting them to be quite as severe as the ones that we're seeing right now around southwestern Ontario. And Kevin, I just found out too that my nephew has been camping at Pinery Park, which was under the tornado warning, but my brother said that his tent was packed up early. He told him, best to get out and get ready at least to go.
That's why I like to go north, so you can get away from the worst of the storms. So yeah, this having a look at our hail swath here. This isn't showing the size of hail, it's just showing the likelihood as the storms move through. So that one cell over London, it started showing signs, but also the wind maker and the tornado threat just south of Sarnia. That one had some impressive hail, as well as that lake breeze one down near just north of Leamington. So these storms are going to continue to feed on this very impressive air mass. Let's look at how much energy we still have kind of to feed on in southwestern Ontario. So you can obviously see where the cloud is there, those deeper burgundies out over Lake Erie. That's where you had the bulk of the energy. That's well over 4,000 joules per kilogram. So that's just putting into perspective how much energy these storms are. But where you have those reds and oranges, that is ample energy to keep severe storms going once they've been initiated, as well as just the added influence of the lake breezes since it is so warm today. So you can see it's the general line extends north of Bancroft all the way across southwestern Ontario. Actually, the bottom end of it is in central Indiana. So you can see the air mass in behind the cold front. No energy back in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, all completely clear. So that's the air mass that's heading our direction. But for the time being, this is kind of the price you have to pay to get rid of the incredible heat and humidity. You need a cold front to break that air mass, and that's exactly what we're going to have. Now, Kim, you're also mentioning this is going to continue through the night. So this is just kind of what we're in for by the time we get to 7, 8 p.m., seeing it interact with the GTA and any of those beiges and browns. That is the energy that's feeding on. So as we go through the evening and especially overnight, you're going to see that really die out for Ottawa and some of it kind of filling back in. So we might get a couple wraparound storms around Barrie and Cottage Country. Very unorganized, nothing to worry about through the overnight. Might just kind of help your sleep at the cottage. But yeah, Ottawa, you're getting into it after midnight and then kind of even pre-dawn, early morning for Montreal and the eastern townships. So we can still have strong storms at that time. You can even occasionally have severe thunderstorm warning in the morning, especially when there is this much energy the evening prior. But yeah, no impressive energy on southwestern Ontario's side come Friday morning and afternoon, because we are getting into that more stable and calmer air mass.
It's exactly what we need. Looking at Twitter and getting permission from people who have posted their photos and videos. So this particular photo, I think we're going to bring it up full, was from @McKeish or Mayday on Twitter. There's a look at some of the damage done to the patio furniture. Looks like trees down, some branches certainly down, a lot of greenery going on here. And there's the second picture. So when Environment Climate Change Canada were talking in that particular warning about extensive damage, this is what they were talking about. A lot of tree damage and trees down in the city. I believe we have some video out of London. And for London, a lot of people talking about the hail. It was coming down in droves, quite large at times as well. There it is, splashing into the pool. Hopefully you're safe. Thank you for your videos, by the way. It's really great when people share their photos and videos. Other people can see what you've gone through, and other people can prepare too for the potential for severe weather. So our tornado warnings continue for the same areas. No change yet for Lambton County, East and West Lambton County, Sarnia, Petrolia, Watford, Pinery Park, all in that tornado warning. And then we've got extensive severe thunderstorm warnings as well through the area. So when we were talking about winds and the damage that was done in Sarnia, at the airport at least, we had a wind gust of 117 kilometers per hour. Not necessarily tornadic winds, but straight line winds can be just as damaging, just as severe. It does not have to be a rotating storm to cause issues. And in this situation, it looks like they may have been straight line winds for Sarnia. I've got some new information here. Okay, so now we do have the tornado warning for Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and northern Grey County. So areas to the north now are currently under a tornado warning. I don't know if I have any radar here. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to go to Kevin in just a moment. But again, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and northern Grey County, you were under a severe thunderstorm warning. You are now under a tornado warning. So again, one of the areas that people go to, obviously, for vacation this time of year. Hopefully nobody out on the water with this kind of storm. And the thing is, you can normally see these storms coming if you are on a lake shore. So again, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, and northern Grey County, you're under the tornado warning. It replaces the severe thunderstorm warning that you were under. And obviously these storms are bringing some very powerful winds, large hail at times, frequent lightning, which is always extremely dangerous, and heavy downpours too, which can be dangerous in themselves, especially if you are behind the wheel of a car and it becomes difficult to see, as we know. So any heavy rainfall can certainly become a problem, not only because of visibility, but because it can pool on the roads, and then you get yourself into a hydroplaning situation. So when we think about these storms, there are a lot of elements that can become dangerous very quickly. Again, lightning, those very damaging winds, strong winds over 100 kilometers per hour at times, heavy downpours. So lots going on with these storms in such a wide area. I feel like we're going to be playing whack-a-mole a little bit, trying to find where these storms are and who's up next. So who's up next? Well, meteorologist Kevin McKay is up next, and he's been looking at these storms as well. And one of the places you have been looking at is the Owen Sound region.
Yeah, so Owen Sound is in, Sarnia is out, and we also have the severe thunderstorm warning over to Wasaga Beach and Barrie. So that is for that little cluster that we watched form over Owen Sound about an hour ago. So let's have a look at what's going on the southern Georgian Bay shores. So we'll keep an eye on the Meaford area, which is just between Collingwood and Owen Sound. So what we're going to be looking for here is any signs of hooking. Now, this is a Canadian radar, so not quite as high resolution as what we get stateside. But what I'm looking at is kind of the south side there. This is well north of Highway 10, but south of 26. So Collingwood, you will be in the line of attack for this storm, as well as Stainer. So we'll see how this kind of the most impressive part of that storm is still on top of the escarpment. So when it comes down, you can stretch that storm, and that's when you can get that added bit of rotation. Now, out ahead of it, right over Wasaga, you can see kind of it's formed over Stainer there, and then it's kind of moved right along the shore. So that's sweeping right through Wasaga, for the time being. See if we can get some velocity here. No, we're not getting any velocity, but we'll have an eye on those storms as they move through the Grey and Simcoe area, and then if we could, maybe we'll get a better shot from the radar in southwestern Ontario. Not really giving us anything additional. Yeah, so the good news for the kind of the areas that are more prone to strong storms coming on shore, Grand Bend, Goderich, Kincardine, the front has now moved through, especially Goderich and Kincardine. So you're not going to be the focal point for this line of storms. It's primarily going to be staying Grand Bend south, where now it's looking like the entire line is now stretching along probably the first 200 kilometers of the 401 is now under the main line here. Chatham, you're right in the thick of it, while Sarnia, you're now completely in the clear, so we'll start surveying the damage there. Now, the good news also, as you just saw when we played this out, this is all kind of bowing out. It's heading towards Lake Erie in every direction. So over the next probably 20 minutes, the leading edge is where we have the strongest winds. That's all going to be out over Lake Erie. Hopefully everyone who is out on the water has made it into shore, and then we're going to be watching, not our primary focus, but we'll keep an eye on how that line acts as it gets down towards Cleveland and Erie, Pennsylvania. But at that time, we'll take it as kind of a window of opportunity to keep a closer eye on these storms around Collingwood and London, and see how still that silent stretch of the storm, we haven't had much happening in that gap. It might stay that way, but there's still plenty of energy right across the central area here. That's where you're farthest from the lakes. There's lots of energy, there's elevation, so the cold front's coming through there. It's just a matter of if it can get anything developed.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time for some people. We're going to be watching these very carefully as they continue to trek eastward and see who will be impacted over the next several hours. But right now, who's being impacted areas, again, around the Owen Sound region, under the tornado warning, Blue Mountains and northern Grey County. Again, if you're under tornado warning, you want to get away from windows. You want to be in an interior room, somewhere safe. You don't want to be in a car, certainly. And if you're in a car, you want to get to a solid structure if you can. It's not the only area under the tornado warning. We'll go farther south. The good news is Sarnia is out of the tornado warning, but Watford, Pinery Park, and eastern Lambton County all currently still in that tornado warning. So if you're not in a tornado warning, you may find yourself in a severe thunderstorm warning. So anywhere in the red. I know it's difficult to see with this line because that is lightning on these storms. These storms have had a history of producing some very large hail, and certainly for producing some strong winds enough to cause damage. We've seen photos of trees down and branches down and that sort of thing around the Sarnia area, where we've seen wind gusts in excess of 115 kilometers per hour. This is what we call a squall line. So let's get into the details of what that is.
When it comes to severe weather, we all think about the tornado as being the most destructive type, and it is. But there's a close second. It's called straight line winds, and it happens in what we call a squall line of thunderstorms. Basically, it would look like this on radar. It's called a squall line because it's a line of thunderstorms that are kind of joining forces, if you will. It occurs when the upper level winds, the jet stream, are parallel to the actual front that's triggering the thunderstorms, and it can cause very strong wind gusts. So a hypothetical setup here is our upper level flow, a trough over the Great Lakes. We've got wind vectors coming out of the southwest. So when we have those southwest winds lining up with the cold front, and the surface winds, everything's aligned, so we see storms out ahead of the front
that sort of join forces like an army of thunderstorms, or imagine kids in the school ground holding hands and forming a line. That's the way I like to think about this. They can be very beautiful to see in the field. This is what it would look like if you saw one. This video in Dresden, this is a shelf cloud, and often will be out ahead of a squall line, and can be quite remarkable to see. So let's just break down that gust front. You can understand what's going on. A gust front is when a storm becomes outflow dominant, so the cold air is winning over the warm air and the downdraft takes over. So we've got that cold pool of air, and it forms as cold air pools out ahead of that racing squall line. And sometimes not only can you get downbursts and microbursts, but you can even get a brief, what we call gustnado, and they don't do a lot of damage, but they do happen with a squall line.
And we have a new area that has now been added to the tornado warning. So Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale are also under the warning. This is just going to get changed behind my back, but you know what I'm talking about. So Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County, all in the warning, and now the additional areas of Barrie and Collingwood, as well as Hillsdale, are all currently under a tornado warning. So those are areas to the north around Georgian Bay and a little farther south. Oh, it looks like our other warnings may have come to an end around the Pinery area as well. So I think those may be out at this point. So Watford, Pinery, I don't see them on this map. I'm hoping that means it's good news. We know that Sarnia had already been dropped from the tornado warning, so other areas look like they are as well. But now Barrie, Collingwood, Hillsdale added to the warning. Same thing for Owen Sound, Grey County. Those areas are under the warning as well to the north. So this is showing you just the watches, the severe thunderstorm watches and the severe thunderstorm warnings. A lot of areas are under those right now, but the two particular, or actually now one spot around the Owen Sound and then all the way across into Barrie are currently under the tornado warning. London earlier under severe thunderstorm warning still is, saw all kinds of hail, and there was one video after another, photos to everybody on social media showing the hail in London, including this video. And boy, it can really pile up quickly. You can get some localized flooding with that combination of hail and heavy rainfall. So here's another photo of what's happening in London. So Niran at Discovery_Monk, thank you for this photo of the hail. So even if you're not in a tornado warning, you can still experience damaging winds, certainly large hail as well, and the lightning too. Here's another shot of the hail coming down in London. Andrea K. D. Giviani showing us what was happening in her backyard. A lot of people showing us what's going on. Andrea captured this as well. That's a pretty decent size piece of hail. Not all the hail was like that, but this is going to cause some trouble, especially if you park your car not in your garage, but outside on the driveway. Okay, so severe thunderstorm warning replaces the tornado warning. Okay, that's exactly what I thought. For the Watford Pinery Park area, Eastern Lambton County, it just got removed from the tornado warning, downgraded to a severe thunderstorm warning, but we want to talk about those tornado warned cells. So here is meteorologist Kevin McKay.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of one of the downfalls with our warnings in Canada. So if you're in Owen Sound, Collingwood, Barrie right now, you're all having tornado warning popping up on whether it's your TV, your cell phone, your app, your radio. But really the only area that needs to be kind of on their toes and seeking shelter is Collingwood, Stayner, Blue Mountain, even parts of Wasaga, because here is our main cell. So well away from Barrie, you're over 42 kilometers away, and not only are you that far, it's not heading in that direction at the time. So you can see just on top of the escarpment, so right on top of Blue Mountain, that's where the main focus is. Owen Sound, Meaford, you are certainly not going to be in the crosshairs, but going to look at the velocity here just so you can see kind of what's kind of triggered now this tornado warning. So you can see just over the last, there's 450 and we don't have much change in the 455 scan, but that is the area of focus where you have that red and that green right beside each other. Now, you see that arch there. That is just the distance from the radar where this is being sourced from. This is coming up from Buffalo, actually, so we're right at the outer peripherals of this, this radar range. So, like I was saying earlier, if you have the beam traveling out from the radar, the further you get from the radar, the higher in the storm that beam is going to be. So I'm actually just going to, on my side computer here, I'm going to measure how high above the ground. So you're up to 11,000 feet above the ground is where that rotation is being displayed. Now, the top of the escarpment there is about 1,000 feet, so you're still about 10,000 feet above the ground, and so let's call that, well, it's over 3 kilometers above the ground. So it's showing, yes, the storm is rotating, but that isn't stating that necessarily that rotation is imminently going to make contact with the ground. But what's going to be very important over the next 15 to 20 minutes is how that rotation acts as it just drops over the edge of the escarpment and it gets that extra 700 feet of air in underneath the storm to stretch that that vorticity, which is the rotation of the storm. So again, anywhere Collingwood, Stayner, Wasaga Beach, even Elmvale, you should at least be close to being indoors in Elmvale, but Barrie, you're not in imminent danger with this cell, and certainly not Meaford and Owen Sound. It's just a matter of the location in the divide of this this region. So if we look at this, Kim was just showing us this. So that little bit of a pink line just to the left of Stayner there, that is the divide of the region. So that line over to Barrie's one region, that line over to Highway 6, so Wyerton and Owen Sound, that is all one region. So if you have even just the slightest chance of one of the corners of those regions under the threat of a tornado, the entire area is getting warned. But the take-home notes here is if you are in Collingwood or Wasaga Beach or Stayner, you certainly should be inside and in a safe location.
In the Sarnia area, Blue Water Power is saying that 20,000 customers are now without power in that area, and that was the region where we saw some destructive winds. We've seen video of that. And here is a look at Sarnia, and some beautiful trees down in blossom too. Well, that is unfortunate. Yeah, we've been seeing all kinds of video like this out of Sarnia. By the way, you can tweet at Weather Network if you want us to show your video. In London, by the way, the hail was the big story. So for some of these storms, you're talking about the wind and the wind damage, and for others, it's the hail, which we had anticipated would be happening with these particular storms. A lot of energy in the atmosphere. This is very typical in these kinds of storms. And then our tornado warnings as well. And as Kevin was pointing out, even if you're in the tornado warning, it's under a large area, and it doesn't mean that you are immediately at risk, but certainly some areas around Barrie, Collingwood, that's your better chance of seeing something severe. And you're probably seeing something already or hearing something already, and it's time to get indoors. You can see a huge swath of the province is either under a severe thunderstorm watch or a severe thunderstorm warning right now. Again, if you're in the watch area, it means that conditions are favorable for a storm to develop. A warning means it is happening or is imminent, so is on your doorstep. And we have those tornado warnings again all around the shores of Georgian Bay. Most recently, Barrie, Hillsdale added to the mix, Collingwood as well in that tornado warning. So this is an area of straight line winds for the most part, but with some storms showing some rotation, either higher in the atmosphere. They get closer to the ground, then we start to get really worried. But here's a look at where we suspected the severe weather to be. It is coming to fruition, and you can see that this risk area is extending all the way into Quebec. That's because we're anticipating these to be long lasting. This line of storms could go for hours, although in the late night hours and early morning hours, there's less of a risk of them being severe because we don't have the daytime heating any longer. We don't have the energy of the day, but certainly it can keep people awake at night with thunder and lightning at 1, 2 in the morning. Here's a look right now at the radar with the lightning, and we can see so much lightning on these storms. We've already seen winds gusting over 115 kilometers per hour, so close to 120. And we only have so many official recording stations in this province, in this country. And so we're going to be relying on places like airports, for example, for official wind gusts for, say, Sarnia. But it doesn't mean that those have been the strongest winds in the city altogether, especially in a city that's a little more widespread. One part of the city could get hit much harder than another, and that's kind of what happens with these wind gusts. Although there's going to be a huge chunk of geography impacted, and with these storms crossing the 401 at this hour, that could be potential chaos, Kevin. I'm thinking about all the trucks that travel that highway going down to the States or crossing into Canada. A lot of people on the 401 in southwestern Ontario.
Yeah, in the 401, they've had the cell completely go through. So let's just have another look at the radar down in southwestern Ontario. That is, it's all good news because it's now the leading edge of it is out along the shores of Lake Erie. So it's all going to be improving along the 401. I wouldn't be surprised if, luckily, many of the transports that are going along there are full, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw even maybe some fifth wheels and some RVs maybe flipped over somewhere along that stretch. So that is going to be an improving situation in southwestern Ontario, at least south of London. Now, that cell towards, or that brought that hail to London, slowly making its way up towards Stratford and Woodstock as it gets gobbled up by the top side of that front. So we're going to see how it starts to interact as it gets picked up by the front and kind of pushed towards Brantford and Hamilton over the coming hours. But we'll go back up to the north side around the Collingwood area, see what we're currently experiencing. Again, this radar is coming in from Buffalo, so this is the outer peripherals of the radar range. So that's why it's getting really stretched north of Midland. This is about as far as you can go reliably. So yes, if you're in Barrie and you've had the tornado warning notification pop up on your phone, you might be seeing some really light rain right now. Thinking this has got to be getting worse if we're under a tornado warning. Well, that is not what the tornado warning is for. The tornado warning is for Craigleith to Collingwood and Stayner. It's just now starting to come over the edge of the escarpment just in the last 10 minutes. So we're going to see how that starts to interact. Collingwood, you're right on the northern edge of that. So you're kind of in a good distance from where any potential rotation will be, but you're not in a good location in terms of avoiding any significant hail. And this will be going towards Wasaga Beach, so I think a lot of people will be calling the beach time, cutting it a little short, especially when we look at our velocity here. So again, this is where you want to see, again, if you're wanting to see a tornado, you're wanting to see green beside red. So just there south of the O in Collingwood. Let's see, over the last couple of scans, really starting to lose that. So that is a good sign. I'm not expecting now that tornado warning to last much longer. We'll likely see that get downgraded. So that'll be a relief, especially for the 150, 170,000 people in Barrie that I'm sure a lot of people are getting nervous. One thing I just developed over the last few minutes here, this is radar-derived rainfall totals over the last 6 hours. So see, basically London to Windsor, everyone's in some shade of green. That's because the front brought some rain to everyone, while up in cottage country, it's a little more hit and miss. This is closer to the warm front. Along the warm front, you don't have a line of storms. You have more so scattered storms. They can be strong as well, not quite as well developed as the cold front. But yeah, so that is the one cell south of Bracebridge that we had briefly warned, and then there's the cluster that developed over Chatsworth about an hour and a half ago. So anywhere in the yellow, we have what, 4 or 5 patches of the yellow that has been over 100 millimeters. So I can actually, I think I'm seeing some signs of orange there south of Meaford. So that's a radar drive 65 millimeters, and that has been in less than an hour. So that is some incredible rainfall rates. We'll see how the Beaver River performs if you're in Thornbury or Meaford and the storm goes past. Maybe it'll be a nice little walk to go down to the river to see how quickly those water levels start to rise. But yeah, Kim, we're certainly not in the clear yet for the GTA. This is the only areas that have really been in the clear now is Sarnia. Everyone else, you still have the potential for things to get worse over the next few hours.
Alveston, they had some damage there. That's in Lambton County, so near Sarnia. Kyle Woods tweeting this. He's at Kyle22Woods, showing some of the street that's lined with trees, some of the damage there. I don't know if I can bring it up a little bit more. Yes, so this is some of the damage done in an area that saw winds close to 120 kilometers per hour. Also talks about the reports of a possible gas leak in the area, which is something else that can happen with these storms. Around 8,000 without power in Windsor after storms went through there as well. And in the Sarnia area, Blue Water Power is saying 20,000 customers without power there. And it's no surprise with the kinds of storms that we have been seeing rushing through here, and the winds too. I tweeted early in the day, you know, if you have any objects around your home, you might want to tie them down or bring them in, because this is going to be a very windy day with these storms passing through. And they're covered in lightning. So much lightning with these storms, another very dangerous aspect to severe weather. And in fact, we're going to look now at some lightning facts.
Lightning, it's one of Mother Nature's most awe-inspiring creations. A massive discharge of electricity producing a dazzling flash of light. But this is superheated light. The temperature of lightning reaching almost 28,000 degrees Celsius. That's 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And those flashes, each one made up of several strokes or discharges that typically last just 30 microseconds. It's 100 times quicker than a flap of a bee's wings. And that speed may be only one reason people unlucky enough to get struck by lightning sometimes only suffer superficial burns. A full bolt of lightning is definitely dangerous. A typical lightning bolt, 300 million volts of electricity. That's a voltage 6,000 times greater than a police taser. And a lightning bolt can be long traveling, reaching more than 8 kilometers in length. That's like starting around the Statue of Liberty and traveling all the way to a tourist-packed Times Square. It's a rare few of us that will ever experience firsthand the power of this electrifying natural event, because getting struck by lightning is still one of the greatest long shots there is. Consider this. Your chance of getting struck by lightning in any given year is 1 in 960,000. To put that in perspective, your chance of getting bit by a venomous snake is about 25 times more likely. So watch below and above.
So not surprisingly, severe thunderstorm watches have been extended now to include the GTA, just popping on here at the very end. So Oakville, Mississauga, Toronto, Brampton, all now in the severe thunderstorm watch. They weren't earlier, but again, the watch means that conditions are favorable for severe weather to develop, and we've already seen this line of storms passing across southwestern Ontario up towards cottage country as well, where we've had tornado warnings in place with some rotation on these cells. But whether or not you are in a tornado warning, you could still see some very damaging winds, straight line winds along this cold front that's coming into a very soupy air mass. A lot of energy in the air today, and really the perfect setup for severe weather, and that's exactly what we've been seeing. 20,000 without power around the Sarnia area, so that's Blue Water Power saying 20,000 there without power, as well as 8,000 around the Windsor area. These storms are likely going to knock out power as they continue to move east. So if you're in a watch area, maybe not quite in a warned area, you're going to want to take precautions now, get ready for a possible power outage, charge things that you need to, including your phone. Here's some of the hail that came down in London, and a video too showing that as well. So a lot of hail on these storms, on top of the gusty winds as well as the lightning. And check out this video out of Petrolia. Rob Shepard capturing the storm at its height, it looks like. I'm hoping that you were in a safe spot looking at this. I would have encouraged you to stay away from the windows, but wow, what an illustration of incredible winds. And that's why we were seeing that damage around the Petrolia and Sarnia area as well. And here are some of the hailstones that fell in London. Look at the size of this. Andrea K. D. Giovanni showing us this on Twitter. Just so impressive. But again, this is going to cause a lot of headaches for some. You may have to call your insurance company if this did some damage to maybe a brand new car of yours. But again, tornado warnings in place around the Collingwood, Barrie area, Hillsdale. Tornado safety includes getting to the lowest level of your home if you can, getting into a solid structure. If you're camping, for example, you want to stay away from windows. We've seen the debris flying already. We've seen branches on the ground, trees on the ground. These are things that you have to be concerned about, not only with tornado warnings, but with the straight line winds as well. So the only difference really sometimes is one is circular, or the winds are coming in a circular motion, and the other, they're coming straight at you one way. I had a downburst in my backyard before. It knocked out the fences of all my neighbors and my house, caused some damage, and it was not a tornado, and it was very isolated, but those winds were so powerful, it did cause a lot of damage. So I know firsthand what these kinds of systems can do. Okay, back to Kevin McKay, who's been watching this. Such a juicy day in the atmosphere. I mean, there was no way we were getting away with not seeing storms, Kevin.
No, this one was inevitable, especially when you have a front coming through. So if you didn't have a front, then yeah, you'd have to rely on a lake breeze to kind of pick anything up and get it developing. But when you have a cold front, it's going to just scoop up all that energy and throw it up, and yeah, you're going to get a whole lot of storms. And this cluster around Collingwood and Stain are still some impressive storms. Now, the structure of them, not as impressive in terms of any rotation. There's still some strong winds aloft, still a couple kilometers above the surface. So yes, especially as those storms weaken, you can get those downdrafts start to become more dominant. And that's when you can get those 100, 110 km/h wind gusts. But they aren't going to be quite as organized as what we saw down in southwestern Ontario. Now, if you are in Barrie, looking to the west, you're starting to see some darker skies. That's just kind of the outer peripheral of the main cluster that's stationed over Stayner. Owen Sound, Meaford, Thornbury, you've now been dropped from the tornado warning, so that is definitely good news. We were expecting that. I think we might hold on to the tornado warning for Stayner and Barrie and Collingwood a little longer, just because if you've been hanging with us for a while, I mentioned that triangle, that Barrie, Midland, Stayner triangle. This cell is just heading into that environment, and that is where you get Georgian Bay lake breeze, Lake Simcoe lake breeze, the escarpment influence, and the Oro-Medonte Highlands influence. So you can have kind of 5 different influences to develop a storm or to influence an incoming storm. And that's exactly what's going to be happening. Now it's dropping over the escarpment, still some strong unorganized winds to the east of Stayner, kind of between Stayner and Minising. So we're going to watch those kind of shift towards the east. Wasaga, you're going to stay on the north side of this little bit of a cluster, but you're certainly off the beach by now, and that's going to be probably going to be sticking around for the next hour or so. Now, For the Barrie area, yes, you're still under that tornado warning. The skies are looking a little more menacing and intimidating to your west and your northeast. So you're still not under a highly likely tornado situation, even though you're under the warning, but we are still going to watch how that cluster starts to react from Stayner over towards Minising and might get over towards Midhurst. But for the most part, the city of Barrie, the bulk of that population will be in the clear. I think actually Aurelia, you have a better chance of having a bigger impact from this cell than Barrie itself, but you're going to have to stay tuned a little longer before it starts to reach you. You're already seeing the higher level clouds moving over, so the sun's gone, but you aren't getting the influences of any of the rain. A good rule of thumb, actually, the kind of the green here, that's actually picking up on the reflectivity in what we call the anvil. So when you have the storm go up and then it looks like it has a little bit of a hat on, that is where you get some of that moisture picked up. So the green is actually a good rule of thumb as to where you have more of a lightning threat. So if you go right to the last scan here, yes, you're going to have a very high concentration of lightning in anything yellow and above, but you can get the stray strokes on the outside all the way from Awenda to Campenfelt Bay. So even if you aren't anticipating or expecting a tornado or imminent hail or wind, you should certainly be inside just to avoid that chance of the lightning. And right down the Dundalk Highlands, we're starting to see those storms along Highway 6 and 10. That is the patch of the front that was pretty dormant as it was coming on shore. We were talking about Grand Bend, Goderich, Kincardine, and how not much has happened. Well, we're starting to see those cells. So that will be, that's Mount Forest and Markdale, Chatsworth, and Dundalk. We're going to see those cells, and we're going to also see how they're going to interact as they drop over the escarpment on Highway 89 and eventually Orangeville. Orangeville, you're always in the crosshairs, whether it's snow squalls or storms, because you're right on the eastern edge of the highest elevation. So we're going to likely see those storms start to develop even further down Listowel and even Elmira. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, and that is likely why, Kim, we've seen those watches extending, because even now with that, this is actually the remnants of just that one cell that formed over London. It is now stretching from Kitchener to St. Mary's as it gets kind of engulfed by the main front. So this is going to be very interesting how it plays out over the next, let's say, 3 hours here.
Yeah, I look at that and I think, who is on the road this hour? So many people. I mean, it's summer holidays, yes, but there are still so many people who travel the highways around southern Ontario. And of course, the GTA has recently been added to the severe thunderstorm watch. The tornado warning continues for Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale that we were talking about as well. I'm trying to see if there's anything new here. Locations impacted include Springwater Provincial Park, Jacks Lake, New Lowell, Strongville, Edenvale, and Essa are all the areas that we're most concerned about in this region. So the tornado warning continues for Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. It's been dropped for the Owen Sound area that Kevin was mentioning earlier. The watch, the severe thunderstorm watch, has been expanded to include Toronto, Mississauga, Oakville, Brampton. So the whole GTA now under the severe thunderstorm watch. Areas to the west are under the severe thunderstorm warning. So those are the areas in red. And then the areas in purple, which are hard to see here, but that's our tornado warning. Let's take a closer look. We'll zoom in a little bit. So again, Collingwood towards Barrie, but there's lines of storms starting to happen in these warned areas. This is a huge area of severe weather. So we're talking about hundreds of kilometers potentially, areas that have been seeing wind gusts over 100 kilometers per hour. We saw that in Sarnia, certainly. Thousands are without power right now. Last number I heard was 20,000, according to Blue Water Power. Down in Windsor area, around 8,000. heavy rain on these storms as well. Pretty clear right now around the GTA. This is the time to get ready for these storms, to prepare for these storms if you haven't yet, because they are almost inevitable. So they're on their way, tracking west to east, a lot of lightning on these storms. You can see our risk map extends all the way east towards eastern Ontario and then crossing into Quebec. That's because we are expecting nocturnal storms as well. That's how long these will happen. We always talk about how dangerous lightning is. What would happen if you got struck? Take a look.
About 3/4 of people will survive, but lightning never leaves a person unharmed.
Lightning is the most dangerous aspect of thunderstorms, and being struck means bad news. But what exactly happens to your body if you're struck?
Turns out when lightning hits the ground, and this is relevant to injuries, it isn't absorbed. The electricity isn't just magically absorbed by the ground. In fact, when it hits, it's a lot like spilling a glass of water on the ground. It will hit and then spread out. Why that's relevant is that people who are standing near where lightning strikes happen can actually be struck by lightning. And there's a phenomenon called step current that can occur, where if you have 1 foot closer to a lightning strike than the other one, the lightning can actually preferentially travel up one leg, through the pelvis, and then down the other leg before exiting the body.
The current can have some really bad effects on your body.
So people routinely will develop cataracts if they're hit around the head. They will lose hearing, which is both a phenomenon from when the plasma channel collapses and creates thunder, which is an explosive sound up close, as well as electrically conducting into the ear itself. People will develop permanent nerve damage of some kind or another. In fact, almost uniformly, people who are struck by lightning will develop chronic tingling or pain along the nerve fibers that were involved. There's a significant number of people who will develop some permanent neurologic damage that can include traumatic brain injury from lightning strikes.
Jason said the heart is also at risk of resetting if struck by lightning. So if someone is hit, it's crucial for them to receive high-quality chest compressions.
In patients who are struck by lightning, it is so absolutely important that they receive high-quality chest compressions to try and resume the heart. And incredibly, that usually will work really well.
In most circumstances, lightning will leave people permanently scarred, so it's best to avoid it altogether and heed any warnings. Like we always say, when thunder roars, go indoors.
We do have widespread watches and warnings now, and the watches do include the GTA. This is a look at the forecast for the precipitation and the timing. So this is around 7 p.m. We can start to see the rain. We only get that far. We'll see if these storms hold on to their strength as they continue to push east. But you can see a massive area, a hugely populated area, is in the path of this line of thunderstorms. Straight line winds are one of the biggest risks with these. We also have the heavy downpours, the hail. People have lost power because those winds have been so extreme, and of course the potential for tornadoes, and we do still have tornado warnings in place. Again, around the Barrie Collingwood area, that's our only tornado warning right now. They've been coming and going. Anywhere in red is the severe thunderstorm warning, and if you're in that warning, you're going to want to be indoors. Obviously, any severe thunderstorm can potentially produce a tornado. In the yellow area, it just means heads up. There's the possibility for these storms to hit you, and it's giving you time now to prepare. Let's look back at some of the video that has been sent in showing us the storms that were hitting London earlier. Christina showing us this. So many people experiencing hail in the city of London. That was the biggest ingredient that had people talking in that particular city. In Sarnia, it was the winds. And we can see here, Harry showing us that the trees are on the ground, a lot of branches on the ground, a lot of cleanup now happening in Sarnia, where about 20,000 customers have lost power, not surprisingly. And this video from Rob and Petrolia near Sarnia showing just how powerful that wind was. The rain literally going sideways in this storm. So these are storms you definitely want to be indoors for, whether it's tornado warned or not where you live, because obviously they can do some big damage. Petrolia at one time was under that tornado warning, same thing for Sarnia. Now we're looking at other areas just a little farther to the east and to the north, but just such a huge chunk of geography, Kevin, under these watches and warnings and in the path of this storm. And it's whether or not we're going to see the strength of these storms maintained over the next several hours.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much of a doubt in terms of the storm staying strong over the next few hours. Some of them might cycle where you'll see them kind of weaken for 20 minutes or so and then kind of get a second gear. But now we have a combined stretch of warnings all the way from Windsor to Penetanguishene, kind of topped up with the cherry on top is that tornado warning still in place for Wasaga Beach and Collingwood. Barrie's in there too, but you aren't the focus. So yes, we had that question of how is this front going to play out as it reached kind of the Dundalk Highlands. We didn't see much action kind of Kincardine to Goderich, but now the top side of the cluster that was kind of London south, actually that one cell that developed on its own, kind of a stray one a couple hours ago, it has actually played a pretty impactful role in stretching the top edge of that storm cluster up towards Kitchener and even Orangeville. That's why we've seen the combining of those warnings from Georgian Bay down to Windsor. But those reds that you see south of Hamilton right now, that is still energy over 2,000 joules, and that is plenty of energy to continue to feed these storms. Again, you aren't needing this energy to get storms going. This is just fuel that it's going to continue to feed off of as they kind of sweep across the lower Great Lakes. And in behind it, you see how back towards Michigan, you still have some energy through central Michigan. So watch as the storm cluster goes through. You still have some yellows and even some oranges there. So yes, that's thanks to some clearing in behind the storms, but it's also indicative that this isn't going to completely take out all the energy. It's not a 100% effective cold front. So that's why we're going to see through the overnight, when we look at what's still to come, we're going to keep an eye here. So essentially, when we talk about a low pressure system, whether it's winter or summer, you can think of Georgian Bay as the low, and then this is your big cold front that's stretching all the way down into Ohio, and then your warm fronts up into central Quebec. Now, as that low kind of just slowly shifts over the next couple of hours, you can see through the early morning, the center of the low is still over, let's call it the Haliburton Highlands here. So that's where we could get some early morning storms. Not worrying about them to being severe, nowhere near as severe as we're seeing right now. And speaking of severe, Kim, we have some new warnings.
Yes, we do. Now it is Woodstock, Tillsonburg, and Oxford County, which are currently in the tornado warning. So right here on the map, it's hard to see the pink on top of the red, but between London and Hamilton. So Woodstock, Tillsonburg, Oxford County, currently under the tornado warning. And that's what's happening along this line of storms. We get different cells that start to rotate, and as a result, Environment and Climate Change Canada will issue a tornado warning. So that's our newest one. And again, if you're in that area, Woodstock, Tillsonburg, or Oxford County, you're going to want to take precautions. We always encourage you to get to the lowest level of the building you're in, your home, your apartment, whatever it is. Get away from windows, get into an area like a closet, an interior room, a bathroom is sometimes a great place to be. We're going to zoom in on this right here now. And this is, again, a look at it. So again, stay away from windows and glass doors. Cover yourself with a mattress or sleeping bag. These are always the kind of advice that we give in a tornado warned area. So Woodstock, Tillsonburg, Oxford County, currently under the tornado warning. Barrie and Collingwood, they continue to be under the tornado warning that was issued earlier, and most everyone else in southern Ontario, central and southern Ontario, are currently under a severe thunderstorm watch or a severe thunderstorm warning. I know Kevin is looking at this right now, this particular cell, because obviously Environment and Climate Change Canada have seen something. I can't click any further at the moment, so I'm going to send it back to you, Kevin. And oh, we're going to do that? Okay. We'll get to you in just a moment, Kevin. Let's go to the science behind hail, because we know that a lot of hail has been falling with these storms. Actually, before you go, don't throw to that just yet, Manny. I have something else. Okay. So, oh, this is the same thing. Okay, so the tornado warned cell is near Thamesford, moving east at 40 kilometers per hour. Environment and Climate Change Canada will often do this. They'll issue the warning immediately, and then they'll get into some more details, things that we need to know about exactly where that storm is. So again, the storm that is capable of producing a tornado, not necessarily a tornado at this moment, but could be, is located near Thamesford and moving east at 40 kilometers per hour. Now let's go to that hail.
One of the most destructive aspects in thunderstorms, and one of the more spectacular, is hail. Now, it can range from size from all the way down at pea-sized, all the way up to softballs. Jeez! Oh, okay. Hail is a form of solid precipitation consisting of ice formed in thunderstorm updrafts and ranges in diameter from about 5 millimeters to 200 millimeters. Depending on the size of the hail, it can cause damage to crops, livestock, buildings, cars, and if you're not careful, you. For hail to form, the ideal cloud must be full of both supercooled water and water vapor. During intense updrafting winds, water droplets get carried towards the top of the cloud. The cold air freezes the droplets into tiny hailstones that are still light enough to be held up at this point. As the stone passes through areas of water vapor and supercooled water within the thunderstorm, different layers of ice build up. This is why if you compare a hailstone to a chunk of ice from your freezer, you'll see that the difference is the layers. The freezer ice won't have any. The stronger the updraft, the longer the growing hailstone will stay within the cloud, building up those layers. Eventually, it will fall. Hail can be a danger at almost any size, but it really depends on how much of it there is. If you have very small hail, but lots and lots of it, it will shred crops and do damage to growing plants. When hail gets beyond about golf ball size, serious damage can occur. Hail is one of Canada's most expensive hazards. Take a look at the damage caused by a massive hailstorm in Calgary in June of 2020. That hailstorm ended up costing $1.2 billion in insurance claims, and it only lasted 20 minutes. So how destructive can hail really get? I've got this old vehicle, my buddy George Karunas, to show you.
And Mother Nature isn't so good at putting hail exactly where we want it, so we've got our own. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, here's a big one. Oh! Ah! The largest hailstone ever recorded was in Bangladesh, and it was 1 kilogram. This one that I made at home is 1.2 kilograms.
So just a little bit bigger than the maximum that we've ever had. Can you imagine the updraft though to hold this up?
Yeah, but that's the part that always blows my mind, is that all these hailstones are held up in the air by wind.
Yeah.
Like, how much wind? A lot.
You know, I'm amazed how well this car held up to that ice barrage.
Yeah, me too. The glass actually was a lot stronger than I was expecting it to be. So, you know, seek shelter if you can, but you're kind of safe in your car?
Kind of.
Kind of.
It's likely that at some point you are going to encounter hail. But as we know, Mother Nature doesn't like to play by the rules, which means that any situation in which you get hail, you could get damage.
Okay, so we do have the tornado warning that's in the Woodstock, Tillsonburg, Oxford County area. So if you're in Beachville or Putnam, maybe we can bring it back to that radar that I just had. Ingersoll, Norwich, Sweeburg, Oxford Center, Burgessville, all of these areas are currently under or at least in the path of a possible tornado. Rotation has been seen within these storms. These are heavy rainstorms. A lot of lightning on them as well. So we're talking about something that can be potentially extremely dangerous along the 401, a very, very busy section of highway. Busy highway in general, the busiest in North America. And so we're talking about an area that is frequented, and now it is rush hour. So this time in the evening on this highway, very dangerous conditions. So Woodstock, Tillsonburg, Oxford County, all of these areas right now are currently under the tornado warning. Areas to the north still under it as well, I believe, around Collingwood and Barrie, yes, still underneath it. And then here is the other tornado warning to the south, where you see Woodstock on the map in pink. That's the other region we're talking about. So this is potentially an extremely dangerous situation, especially with the amount of traffic, cars, trucks that we anticipate to be on the road in these areas. If you're in Beachville or Putnam, you're going to really want to be indoors at this point in time. You're not going to want to travel anywhere over the next little while, because this can be extremely dangerous for you. Okay. I'm going to go now to meteorologist Kevin McKay. These storms, I mean, the rotations keep popping up within the line of storms. Difficult to see, and for people under the severe thunderstorm warning, I'm thinking they need to really have heads up, because this rotation can develop at any time.
Yeah, and I've been trying to pinpoint the situation around Woodstock and where to really highlight, and it's been a little tricky, because we have kind of a unique situation. Now, normally when you have a cold front, the storms are along one straight line, but this is that cell we're looking at that originated over London, and as it slowly moved to the northeast, you had this new line coming in from the southwest. So what happened was we have a little bit of an outflow from this line of storms, while this line of storms has an outflow as well, and the one to the southwest is moving faster. So keep an eye on how those two interact as we play this out over the next half hour. They run into each other, and as they run into each other, they still have the combined motion to the east. So you're now having a north component, a south component, and coming in from the west. So what's happened is a little bit of just localized convergence within that absolute mess of a structure. Now, the area that I'm thinking specifically that they're focusing on is right in here, which is right on Highway 2 between Woodstock and London. Now, this is closer to that Buffalo radar, but not significantly closer. So if we do see any rotation on here, it's still relatively high in the storm. So there is what I'm thinking is the little bit of a signature that they are focusing on the north side of Ingersoll, Highway 2, heading right towards Woodstock. So this is going to likely take the exit onto the 403 and head towards Brantford, rather than going up the 401 towards Kitchener. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, by no means is it impressive rotation, but certainly worth keeping an eye on. On the south side, those lighter greens towards Tillsonburg and Highway 3. Now that is also not worth ignoring. However, these are more so straight line winds. So you might still get wind gusts of 90, 100, maybe even 110 kilometers an hour, but they'll be a little more widespread. And the best way to tell in the aftermath, oh, did a tornado go through, or was this just straight line winds? Well, look at the damage, and then look where it originated. If all your tree damage has gone in the same direction, that's just straight line wind. But if you have, let's say you had part of a roof removed and some insulation came out, if that insulation is stuck on all four sides of the house, then you had rotation. If it all goes in one direction, then that's straight line wind. So that's always a good trick. And then it gets a little tough. Kim, you were mentioning having to deal with your insurance companies. Now, I have heard some horror stories having to deal with companies that will cover tornado damage but not wind damage. So that can be a bit of a battle if you are in the unfortunate situation where you have to make some level of claim.
I wanted you to take a look too at Barrie. Tornado cell looks like it's close to Barrie at this moment in time. Our meteorologists in the newsroom pointing that out to me as well. Barrie, the other spot that is currently under a tornado warning. So we're watching a cell headed towards that city. If you are in Barrie as well, you know you have been under a tornado warning for a while. You need to be in a safe spot, and I hope you are at this point in time. The alerts go off obviously on your phone, radio, television. Hopefully you got the signal and know exactly what to do. So Barrie area again, there looks like to be a tornado cell near the city of Barrie. I know nobody in Barrie wants to hear that. Obviously, a lot of people remember the tornadoes from the past in the city of Barrie. Again, we're talking about storms that are widespread across Ontario this hour. Strong winds, but a lot of lightning on these storms, heavy downpours as well. And again, this is a mess of a storm. Once you're in the middle of it, I mean, it will be very difficult to travel, to get around at all. If you're in the watch right now, like areas around, let's say Niagara, Hamilton, Toronto, this is the time to be prepared because we can see what is coming. I actually have, I believe, a web camera from the Highway 401 and the 403, and it looks like it is in the middle of the night. Maybe we can bring this up full, Manny. I'm not sure how much people can see at home with this, but this is the current webcam at the 401, at the 403. You can see the cloud, the storm overhead, and it is almost pitch black. If that is an accurate representation, this is the kind of weather these storms are bringing. So the tornado warning now has been dropped for the Woodstock area. Okay, so that's some good news. So the tornado warning has dropped for Woodstock. It is out. The area around Barrie is still in, and again, severe thunderstorm warnings widespread. You don't have to be in a tornado warning to get damage with these storms or to be in a dangerous storm. I know things keep changing behind me. Let's take a look at the hail that was falling in London a little earlier. This was Mike Ager showing us his view. Oh boy, yep, hail coming down, heavy rainfall. This looks like around pea-sized hail. We've seen photos where that hail was very large. Another shot of London and the hail going down. Yeah, people really get excited about hail. It can be exciting to watch. Certainly it can be damaging. We've been talking about that. Hail can cause real issues for fruit crops, for example, or any kind of crops for that matter. It can be a real problem for farmers. The last thing they want is a hailstorm when things are just getting going or you have ripe fruit already. Hail can be a real disaster for some. So hail with these storms, certainly. This is a look at the potential for hail. So a bit of a hail forecast in pink here, and that's what we're looking at. Down again around the Windsor, Chatham area, we had hail there. Certainly London had hail as well already. So this is the potential as we go into Thursday night. It's not over yet. In fact, these storms are expected to last well into the night. And again, we could see more tornado warnings as they go. We were anticipating most of the rotation, the action down towards southwestern Ontario, which has happened. We certainly did have those tornado warnings around Sarnia and Petrolia earlier, but also we've been seeing those tornado warnings farther north around Barrie and Collingwood, Owen Sound at one point under a tornado warning. The good news is the Woodstock warning has ended, but the Barrie tornado warning is still in. I'm going to go now to Kevin McKay to take a closer look at this particular storm.
Yeah, I was just looking at a couple pictures that were sent to me by some friends in Barrie, and some incredible shelf clouds, wall clouds coming in, especially on the north side of the city. Once we get up to the latest scan here, I'm going to be getting those pictures into the system here to show you this purple kind of contour curve here. This is what's putting an incredible shelf cloud into the north end of the city. Also a green tinge, which you'll see is a great signature for some hail embedded in there. Now the good news, yes, this is the tornado warn cell, but looking at the velocity here, so this is still at the south. So let's go up to the Barrie area and get right to the latest time frame here. So it's just coming into the west side. So Tangle Creek under it right now is coming right up to Mapleview and the 401. Now, as you're seeing, just a whole lot of red for Barrie and south, all the way down to the casino. That is just going to be straight line wind. So that's good news for downtown north. Now the one question mark I have is this little green spot south of Midhurst, right up against that red. That is some signs, again, of high level rotation. The beam is still over 2 kilometers above the surface. So this is picking up signs of rotation in higher levels of the storm. But we're going to see how that interacts and if it can extend further down towards the surface before it gets out over Lake Simcoe there. So this is going to go right over the 11-400 divide. And it's going to be, again, impacting all of the entire city of Barrie. The main threat right now is going to be with the elevation. I wouldn't be surprised to see some flooding, especially down in the city, but also just the strong straight line winds. So we'll keep an eye on that cell. Now, going back down to that incredible video you just showed from the 401 and 403, that's the leading edge of our main line, again, coming into Woodstock. So that is the little nook that Woodstock's in right there. So that's where the webcam was, and this entire line, keep an eye on that little kink in that main line. That is where, if you do get any rotation embedded, that's where it will be. Now, the other area to now put some attention is the Dundalk Highlands. So Erin, Orangeville, Shelburne, Highway 9 and Highway 89 on top of the escarpment right now. We're going to see how this acts as it approaches Airport Road, and then it's going to drop down into the Alliston and Tottenham, and eventually getting over towards the Holland Marsh and the 400 over the next. Well, let's take a moment here and just kind of pace out what we're dealing with, see what kind of time frame we're working with. So an hour ago, back just west of Mount Forest, the main line still traveling in a pretty straight line. So just measuring that out there over the span of an hour, you're moving at about 50 kilometers per hour. So that's a good clip for a cold front. So we just can then measure another 50 kilometers out. So from 5:45, let's call it by 7 o'clock, we might be 55. So crossing the Holland Marsh, getting right into the middle of Newmarket and Aurora by 7 o'clock. And you can just interpret that line going straight down. So that's when we're going to be moving through already Brampton, Mississauga, getting into Etobicoke, Vaughan, Woodbridge, and eventually downtown North York. That'll be in the 7 o'clock hour. So hopefully the majority of people can kind of beat this home, but the 401 doesn't handle even light rain very well. So this is going to be a bit of a mess over the next couple of hours. Anyone who is maybe stuck at work late or just has to maybe get across the city for a baseball game, Kim, it's going to be a tough go over the next couple hours.
Yeah, and you know, so many kids play baseball this time of year. Parents are taking their kids to baseball and soccer, and I think there will be a lot of cancellations. The problem is these come in quickly and then end quickly, but they could be leaving some damage behind, and we don't want anybody to be unsafe. And certainly if there's any chance of lightning, I know when my daughter was in soccer, any chance of lightning, and that's it. The city would close down all the parks for that. There would be no soccer that evening in the areas that would be affected. So hopefully you're just taking the precautions that you want to. Maybe take the night off and enjoy the indoors. Severe thunderstorm warnings prevail across a good chunk of southern Ontario. If you're not in these this red area, these severe thunderstorm warnings, you're likely in the yellow, and that's the watch, meaning that conditions are favorable for storms to develop. So we've got all the ingredients for storms, and then the warnings mean they're happening or they're imminent. And we have that one area around Barrie Collingwood that is under a tornado warning. This is a look at potential for hail. We've got hail on these storms. We've already seen quite a bit of it around the London area. There's a close-up look at the tornado warning. We've had them come and go throughout the last hour or so, but this is the one that remains, at least at the moment. So we can get rotation within this line of storms. We've been talking about straight line winds, but it is getting very messy. The winds may not be the biggest risk with these storms at this moment in time. Heavy downpours will be, a lot of moisture on these storms, and certainly the lightning as well. So just a big mess. This is another look just north of Barrie where we're looking at the potential for a tornado there. The one around the Woodstock area has ended, so that warning has come to an end. But look at this radar. When we're looking at this, the reds are the heaviest rain. When you get into the pinks, even more so, and that's usually an indication that there's hail on these storms. It's that intense. The greens, lighter, and then the yellows kind of in the moderate there. So green, yellow, red, and then into the pinks or purples, that's when things are really getting dicey. So if you're at home and you're looking at your app and you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I looking at when I'm looking at a radar, and how intense is this? Again, when we're getting into these kinds of colors, these pinks and these dark colors, that's the severe weather. So this is the forecast. We're anticipating this big blob to continue its trek eastward, the north of Lake Ontario. How strong the storm is when it may hit your city, that's still to be determined. But these are strong storms, as we've seen. They're just very, very messy. Here's another look at that warning. Again, tornado warning, Collingwood Barrie area. Beneath that, severe thunderstorm warnings, and we're looking at the Dundalk Highlands. So in Grand Valley, Orangeville, these areas could be hit hard in the next hour, in the next half hour or so. And again, anybody traveling, I mean, this is prime travel time right now, could be hitting these storms. And when you're getting the heavy rainfall and you're looking at hail potential, this can be very tricky on the roads. Pooling, hydroplaning, that's all part of a storm like this. So when it comes to predicting tornadoes or issuing tornado warnings, which is the best way? We talk about storm spotters and we talk about radar. Those are two ways that we can tell if there's a radar. Let's take a closer look at the science behind that.
I know this is a little bit mesmerizing, watching a radar scan the environment for potential severe weather. Let's dive right in and look at a hypothetical situation, and I'm going to talk about some of the drawbacks using radar. So we've switched it over to velocity. Watch the scan come through right overhead. That's the hint. We need to know what's going on in the lowest levels of the atmosphere. You guessed it. That's where the storm spotter, storm chaser comes into play. A very dangerous job. You need a lot of training. There's a lot at stake when you're tracking the lowest levels of the atmosphere. It can be incredibly dangerous, but that job is really paramount in helping meteorologists figure out what is going on. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a quiz here. Where do you think the radar beam's extent is in this storm? How low does it go? What are we uncovering? Well, the radar generally samples the highest parts of a storm. It shows that rotation aloft, but that storm spotter on the ground can relay really vital information to meteorologists and emergency management officials if a tornado situation, a tornado emergency, for example, is ongoing. So they're a vital part of the weather community. Really respect the storm spotter.
And somebody spotted this storm right over Barrie. This is right over the 400. Check out this shelf cloud right over the city. This is the reason why Barrie has been in a tornado warning. So, I mean, it doesn't get much more clearer than that. You don't see a tornado, but you certainly see that massive shelf cloud. So we're looking at severe weather across the city of Barrie right now. Collingwood was in that tornado warning as well, but Barrie is where we were concerned. Obviously, Tyler Hamilton showing us the difference between storm spotter, someone actually seeing a storm that looks like this versus radar, which may not be quite as accurate, but sometimes is the best tool that we have here at the Weather Network and certainly at Environment and Climate Change Canada. Here's some video from London earlier where the storms hit with hail, large hail in some cases, hail that could do some damage. You can see it's ripping leaves off trees. And we've had branches down in places like Sarnia, for example. I know our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, is on the job and he's taking a look at the damage that is in Sarnia. Let's look at one more video here of the incredible winds over Petrolia, which at one point was under a tornado warning. So was Sarnia. It looks like maybe straight line winds in those situations, but the winds were just so incredible. Powerful winds, sideways rain, 20,000 without power at one point in that area. Blue Water Power talking about those outages, and then down towards Windsor. I know there have been outages there. We'll try to keep you updated on who's losing power. But if you are not in a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning, but you're in the watch and it's still looking pretty clear where you are, just prepare for possible power outages, prepare for possible wind or hail damage, whatever you can do at this point in time. Maybe not a lot, but it's the time to do it if you're not yet under a warning. Once a warning hits, it's kind of too late. And London, again, this is the kind of hail that we saw in London. Can we go to Mark? Okay, great. So we have our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, who went out to Sarnia, there he is, to see some of the damage done. We had heard that there were reports of downed trees, etc., and certainly that looks like the case, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. You're actually seeing power guys right now. They're dealing with down power lines, seeing a lot of large branches down. And this has been potentially one of the harder hit areas. The other place that I've heard a lot of damage is in Alvinston and near Petrolia, sort of all the areas, a couple of the areas that I was in earlier. Not surprised, the winds were unbelievably strong on parts of the line, but this is sort of the beginning of the cleanup. So if you do see power lines down, please don't step over them. Stay well away from them. You don't necessarily know if those are live or dead. I'm far enough away, and you know the power guys are here, so they're dealing with it. So I'm actually I'm quite safe right now from any sort of electrical problems. But you know, if you don't know, don't go. Just let the electrical repair guys come in and deal with it. Best that you just stay away from the area and not get yourself into trouble, because again, this is the danger now. We're not dealing with any more of the winds and hail in Sarnia, but we are dealing with the cleanup, the potential dangers that comes with cleanup.
So tell me a little bit about your drive. I know you got caught in the storm at one point. Just so people who are not yet in the storm, but maybe in the line of these storms, tell us a little bit about your drive and why people shouldn't be, you know, maybe behind the wheel right now.
Kim, it happens so fast. I mean, I can usually stay ahead of the storm. I usually want to, you know, be ahead to show you what's going on, you know, with that storm coming. But I got into sort of where I wanted to be, right in the area where there was a very strongly rotating wall cloud. It was right where the tornado warning was, and I wanted to stay east of it, and it caught me like that. Like it was on top of me before I could do much. And all I could do was sort of park the car in a spot where I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of flying debris and hold on. It was impressive winds, at least 100 kilometers an hour. The car was rocking back and forth, and I couldn't see a thing. And that's a big danger when this whole thing comes over. It's not going to be a quick thing. It's going to sort of hit, and those winds are going to stay for a little while, because this is a very thick line. Like when you look down on the radar, it covers a very large area. Sometimes it's just a couple of kilometers. This is more like tens of kilometers of really, really bad conditions to drive in. So just, if you don't have to be out in this one, just stay home, because yeah, it's nasty.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks for your insight. I know you're going to be around there for a bit and continue your storm chasing, so stay safe, and we appreciate your information. I just wanted to let you know we have a new tornado warning. At least the tornado warning that we had in the Barrie-Collingwood area has been expanded. It now includes Orillia, Lagoon City, and Washego. So here is the line now where our tornado warning is: Collingwood, Barrie, Orillia, but most recently Orillia, Lagoon City, and Washego all added to the tornado warning. Locations impacted include Barrie, South Barrie, Little Lake, Oro, Kempenfelt Bay, and Hawkstone. Those are the areas that Environment Climate Change Canada are pointing to directly, who may be in the path of a rotating storm. As we know, there is a massive area under either a watch or a warning across Ontario. So even if you're not in the tornado warning, if you're in the severe thunderstorm warning, you're likely seeing some very bad weather like Mark was just describing. Again, strong winds, but lots of lightning, lots of heavy rainfall on these storms as well, and they are messy too. So right now, again, Aurelia has been added to the tornado warning, Lagoon City, Weshego included, and we haven't yet seen the dropping of Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale, so those areas all continue to be in the tornado warning. Kevin, I think, has had some time to catch up here looking at the radar. I'm going to go now to our meteorologist, Kevin McKay.
Yeah, I don't doubt why they've added the east side of Lake Simcoe, Beaverton and Lagoon City. You are going to be in for something special, as this storm is just going to sweep right across the lake. Nothing is going to slow it down, with the exception of the island. But anywhere from Sutton to Beaverton, up to Aurelia, the east side of the shores should definitely be inside. We'll likely see some tree damage as this storm, when it goes across the lake the size of Lake Simcoe, you can probably add maybe 10 to 15 kilometers per hour of wind once it does hit the shore. So the other area I was looking at, but still back down along the 401, where we had that incredible video at the 403-401 junction, we've now start to see a little bit of cycling along the 401 portion between Woodstock and Kitchener, but the 403, you're still going to be directly impacted, starting to get the leading edges into Brantford and Hamilton. But here's the main focus for the GTA from Guelph to Shelburne. Now this line is going to continue to likely strengthen, because out ahead of it, yes, you're almost on the escarpment, but also you're now going to have the Oak Ridges Moraine going across the north side of the GTA. So quite often you can get storms to either curve south, it's kind of like going across a balance beam, or they'll go north. So that's when Newmarket, Mount Forest, and even up towards the Simcoe shores will get the worst of it, while on the south side it'll get down towards the 407, so Markham south. So quite often you can still get this, if the storms stay along the Oak Ridges Moraine, you can get even added influence for places Stouffville, across Bloomington into Uxbridge and Port Perry. That's what we had during the derecho on the May long weekend last year. Now, as for downtown Toronto, you're going to be impacted a little further south down the line. So it's still essentially the same timing. So that's where we are right now, still pacing it out an hour ago, still back towards Kitchener. So that should still be about 50 kilometers or so, closer to 40. So we can pace that out in the next 40 minutes. Here, we even have another way to do this. So let's go up to our latest scan, and let's just draw that line, time it out at 45 kilometers to 50 kilometers an hour. Areas in the black, that's where you're going to be impacted. So Milton, Waterdown, Brampton, Milton, Tottenham, and all the way up to Borden, you're going to start to see the influences anywhere to the east of the 400 and even east of Pearson. You're going to be more than another hour, so you'll be after the 7 o'clock hour for when the majority of the core of the GTA will be impacted. Starting to get a little more unorganized here as the line kind of approaches the radar, but you can see how far south this main front goes. We're going all the way from Weshego, which is under that tornado warning, all the way down to Cleveland. So that is just what's being picked up by our the one radar here from Buffalo. Now, see how you have kind of three little echoes there. So there's one arch, there's another arch, and there's the main arch to the south. So where those kind of interact, that's where you can get kind of, it's called a bookend bookend vorticity, so you can get some brief spin-ups, sometimes a little more prolonged, but that is going to be the main focus, and that is exactly, coincidentally, where we have our 2 current tornado warnings, because in those 2 areas you have essentially the Angus to Barrie area and the Woodstock. So we're going to continue to see how those 3 bows start to overlap and how those tracks continue to move as we approach what I think there's about 7 million people that are going to be under the influence of this line over the next 2 hours.
You know, I just saw that the tornado warning, or the severe thunderstorm warning, sorry, has been expanded to include Hamilton creeping in on Niagara as well. Not quite there, but we can see that ECCC is just ahead of these storms. So again, a warning means that these storms are imminent or are occurring. Severe thunderstorm warnings, yes, along that entire line, and then we get the Barrie Aurelia tornado warning a little farther to the north. There's a close-up shot of it, and again, if you're in a tornado warned area, you're going to want to take immediate precautions like getting to shelter, getting into the lowest level of your home, away from windows. It's all about flying debris when it comes to tornadoes. That's how you can get hurt or even killed, and that's not what you want. You want to be in a nice, safe spot, a safe structure. I know people get excited to see storms. We do here as well at the Weather Network. You want to see them coming in, etc. But I've seen video even recently in Barrhaven where the tornado touched down, where a man thought that he had lots of time. It seemed like the storm was far away, and then he said the next thing you knew it was right in the neighborhood. It was right on his street, and he barely had time to get indoors. So what may look like something that's far away could come upon you very quickly, and you don't want to take any chances. I know we see these things on television and in videos, and it looks exciting, storm chasing, but you really have to know what you're doing in order to be near a storm like this. You have to know its path, where it's going, how it's going to work, and unless you are educated in this and in weather, you're going to want to be in the safest spot possible in your home. And I, you know, on a personal level, I told my daughter before she went to work today to watch out for watches and warnings in Hamilton, and I just messaged her to make sure she's home safe. Her shift ended at 5, and I knew that was about the same timing as these storms were moving in. So you know, I want to make sure my kids are aware of what's happening, and I'm hoping that you do the same thing with your kids, even the older ones like mine. So here's another look at that storm around the Barrie area. Again, this is the tornado warned region, and we've been seeing some pretty impressive looking clouds and sky over Barrie in the last hour. Just really messy though. This storm is widespread, impacting so many people along it, and about to move towards the GTA, and the GTA mostly in a severe thunderstorm watch, with the exception of Hamilton right now, which is under the severe thunderstorm warning. But again, this is going to likely impact millions of people over the next couple of hours. So that's why we're telling people now is the time to get ready if you're still in the watch. But these storms can come up very quickly, Kevin. And I know in some of those areas, again, around Aurelia and Barrie, that's where it has been particularly bad in the last little bit, and these storms will continue to move eastward. So this is a forecast where we expect that precipitation to move, and this is heavy, heavy rain. So in some cases, we're talking about localized flooding, and then the lightning. So this is radar that shows the lightning on these storms, and it's just been nonstop. We know that these storms have had a reputation of bringing down tree branches and even trees in places like Sarnia. The winds may not be the biggest factor at this point in time as these storms become a little more disorganized, but this is something that's changing and moving all the time. And so we're looking at just a disaster of storms moving towards the GTA at this point. So there's the areas now under the severe thunderstorm warning. I see that, it looks like Toronto may be under the warning now. Am I correct on that, severe thunderstorm warning? And it looks like it's just moved right to the shores of Lake Ontario there. And certainly into the Niagara region, looks like they're under the severe thunderstorm warning at the last frames of this particular radar. Okay, let's talk about lightning dangers in Canada now.
Of this storm, a lot of the lightning. Jeez, that was close. Wow, that is why you stay in the car.
On average, each year in Canada, there are between 2 and 3 lightning-related deaths and 180 lightning-related injuries. The numbers have dramatically improved over the last few decades, with Canadians better understanding lightning and practicing safety. You've heard us say this before. When thunder roars, go indoors. It's saving lives. This is Health and Weather Extended, and today we are going to talk about lightning strikes. It's incredibly rare for lightning to directly strike a person. However, lightning happens and travels fast. Dr. David Sills, Executive Director of the Northern Tornadoes Project, explains how ground currents and side flashes can cause injury.
So with the ground current, the lightning hits the ground, and if the person is nearby, then the current travels along the ground, then into the victim. Usually, if that distance is only about 10 meters, that can cause a fatality. If it's even 15 to 30 meters away from the place where the lightning struck, that can cause an injury. So you don't have to be right next to the lightning to get injured. It can be quite a distance away. The other type of lightning strike for a person is with a side flash, and that's when lightning hits a tall object and then partway down to the ground, it arcs over to the person standing nearby, and the current goes through them. So that can result in injuries or fatalities.
Lightning can be incredibly dangerous, reaching temperatures of 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. To put this into perspective, the surface of the sun is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That means lightning is 5 times hotter than the sun. And that's why you never want to find yourself in a scenario like this. Let's say you witness someone fall to the ground after experiencing that strike. Here's how you would need to react.
Be sure to assess your own level of risk. What may be the case that if you're in that same environment where somebody else has just sustained an injury of that nature, although it's very, very slim, we want to reduce the chance that anyone else, like a potential rescuer or a layperson rescuer, is going to become the next patient. But for sure, while this is occurring, phone 911 immediately, or have someone else phone 911 and report back to you. After 911 has been phoned, and if it's safe to do so, of course, approaching the patient and assessing them as quickly as possible is very, very important. Whether or not you need to assist them into a recovery position while you're waiting for help, or whether you may need to actually initiate CPR if that person has gone unconscious and they are not breathing.
People who are affected by a lightning strike may develop a rash, and it takes on a pretty interesting shape, almost looking like a strike itself. It's called the Lichtenberg figure. They are known to form when an electrical surge causes blood vessels to burst. These rashes are incredibly rare and usually are not permanent. There are many fascinating elements when it comes to lightning, but the one thing you should always remember is this.
In general, if you can hear thunder, then you should be heading indoors. You should also stay there for 30 minutes after the last rumble of thunder or lightning flash that you see. And that's because people often go back outside too soon and maybe get hit by lightning. It's about 1/3 of lightning casualties are caused by people going out too soon after the storm has gone by.
Keep in mind, if you are out on the water and you see flashes in the distance, get to shore immediately. Water is a great conductor, and if lightning strikes the lake, it can spread quite far. Thanks for tuning in to Health and Weather Extended, the chat about lightning strikes and how to react.
Well, sounds like the lightning rules are much the same as the swimming rules. Wait 30 minutes before going out. Now here's a check on the Barrie situation. There's the spot of rotation currently. Now, if we pull this back to see where that is, that's essentially right over the mouth of Campenfelt Bay. So Shanty Bay and Friday Harbor are kind of under that rotation. Now the shelf cloud, it's going to be well out to basically right over the middle of Simcoe right now. So you're already getting great views of that from the east shores of the lake. Now, want to go back to just our radar here. We'll first start with just that cell, what it's looking like now. There is much more of just a straight line structure with it all the way down to Highway 89. So that's a promising sign. Now you see how it gets a little messy to the north of Washago. That's for two reasons. We're getting out of the radar range once you get north of kind of basically north of Aurelia, but also the beam from Buffalo has to go through that storm around Barrie, and then it has to try to pick up on what's going on the backside. Now, following our main structures down here, there again are one line south of Barrie, that little bookend, little nook for Airport Road and 89. Next one going down to nearly Milton now, but these are all just along the front. Now, one area I want to kind of hop the border to show you. This is a very impressive supercell in Pennsylvania, and you see it has developed well ahead of the main front. So this is a sign that we still have plenty of energy to feed off of. So what we're having is this line of storms is kind of having outflow winds shooting out ahead of it, and it is developing these prefrontal storms all the way, call it 50 kilometers out ahead of the main line. Now, eventually, these individual storms will get scooped up and combine forces, kind of like when you play fishy in school and you grab someone and then you combine forces, and now it's more like Red Rover. Well, that's what the storm's going to be doing, and I'm going to take a look at this cell right over the center of Lake Simcoe, or Lake Erie. Too much talk about Lake Simcoe there. So let's see what's going on with it. If we do have any velocity, any rotation going on. No impressive signs of rotation. So that's just, it does look pretty ominous on the reflectivity there just because of its shape and structure. But yeah, we're still mainly focused on our tornado warned cell going across Lake Simcoe. Still have a lot of focus around Thornhill, north side of Pearson, Brampton. This little individual cell, it's going to get scooped up by the cell coming now across Highway 10, just now dropping off the escarpment. See how that interacts as it now will approach the GTA. A bit of a cluster mess for Hamilton area, but also we're now going to be putting some attention down on the north or the south side of the Niagara Peninsula. So Dunnville, Welland, Fort Erie, and eventually into Buffalo. Not to say the North Shore, St. Catharines, and Stony Creek. We've actually now are going to be talking about both Stony Creeks in southern Ontario. So that will all be impacted by our main line still coming in from Brantford. Before I pass it over to Kim, I'm just going to take one more look here at the radar-derived rainfall totals over the last 6 hours. So the main area is still Chatham, well over 30 millimeters, but we still have a couple bullseyes around Stratford, London, Collingwood, Stayner, Meaford, all over 50 millimeters, and we're going to continue to see at least that second shade. I think everyone across the GTA is going to see probably 10 to 20 millimeters. We'll locally see that 30 to 40. Now, this it could be not a worst case scenario, but it's not great when the entire watershed that the GTA sits on sees a quick dose of 20 to 30 millimeters, because that's all going to converge in those in the Don River, Humber, Credit, Rouge, Duffins, whatever you're flowing into. The concrete jungle is all going to be going into that, so we could be looking at more of a delayed flood impact, probably by about 8 or 9 o'clock on the backside of the front once it goes through, Kim.
Yeah, that's never a good thing when we get heavy rain in Toronto. My goodness, it can cause a lot of issues all at once. Toronto not under the warning just yet, but certainly areas all around Toronto have been under that severe thunderstorm warning. I should get my words straight. Mississauga has recently been added. Oakville, Burlington, all under a severe thunderstorm warning as this line of storms moves eastward. So many videos on the storms that have already occurred. We're going to take a look back at a little bit of the history of this line of storms.
back there is a wall cloud. Got a beautiful, gigantic core, gigantic hail in there likely, but right there, that is the business end of the storm. That's the dangerous part of the storm.
Okay, that's just a little taste of the storms that have already rolled across the western part of the province, and they will continue to push east. This is a shot of the cloud above Barrie at one point, not that long ago, as a matter of fact. Some scary looking storms, tornado warnings in place for Barrie and Orillia as we speak. The storms produced some large hail in cities like London, and people were posting on social media. There's the video out of London as well. Andrea K. Di Giovanni showing us what it was looking like on her patio furniture. Yeah, good day to be inside. And there's another look at the hail, fairly significant in size as well. So these storms have really packed a punch. And if you are in a tornado warning, or if a tornado warning is issued at some point, just be aware of safety. I know people have already asked me questions about this. Again, we like to reiterate where you should be in a tornado, and people get worried if they live, say, in an apartment building. They're like, well, I don't have a basement. So get to the lowest floor. You want to be away from windows. That's the key. You want to be in a safe place where there's a lot of structure, a lot of walls around you, like say a closet, for example, something that's windowless if you can. So you don't necessarily, if you don't have a basement, that's okay. There's other places you can go, as an interior room, a closet, that kind of thing. So that's what we encourage people to do. And again, we've got Orillia and Barrie in that tornado warning. This is just a risk map because I wanted to show you that these storms are going to continue well into the night, into the early morning hours in eastern Ontario and Quebec likely. And so you may be kept awake with the lightning and the heavy rain, but we're not expecting them to be nearly as severe as the storms that we have seen through the afternoon and evening hours. And of course, this is prime time for kids to be outside, for playing baseball, for playing soccer. One of my colleagues talking about his kids' baseball being canceled tonight, not surprisingly, in the Oakville area because they are under a tornado warning, or a severe thunderstorm warning. I gotta stop saying that, severe thunderstorm warning as well at this moment in time. Okay, I talked a little bit about tornado safety. Here's another video on it.
When you're under a tornado warning, or maybe you hear a tornado siren, and especially if you see a tornado, now is not the time to grab that smartphone and start filming. Instead, you should be inside and seeking shelter. So you race up to your bedroom, which is usually a safe spot to be, until a tree comes crashing through your roof. Coming down to a lower level, great idea. Trying to see the storm outside your window, bad idea. Leaving the windows was a good idea, but even exterior walls like this may not be as safe as you think. Tree limbs and 2x4s, they can act like toothpicks with winds this fierce. This is where you want to be, in the lowest level possible. And you want to surround yourself with as many walls between you and the storm as you can. And then you stay here until it's safe. Because this room could be the one thing that saves your life.
Jacqueline Whittle there, pretty dramatic video, but here we go. Severe thunderstorm warnings now encompass much of the GTA. The city of Toronto not in it right now, but right on your doorstep, certainly Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, Niagara is all in it as well. Niagara was the first to kick things off, an early storm ahead of the big line, a big mess of storms. So they saw a little something roll around the Port Colborne area, but anywhere in red from Mitchell across to the shores of Lake Ontario under a severe thunderstorm warning, but it's north towards Lake Simcoe where we've been seeing the tornado warning in place. So severe thunderstorm warning in red, tornado warnings in pink, in yellow, severe thunderstorm watches. These storms have produced some damaging winds down around Sarnia, Alveston as well. That's where our storm hunter Mark Robinson is headed to look at some of the storm damage there, and it's the reason why there have been power outages in southwestern Ontario. Some very powerful winds associated with these storms. Here's another look at the area that is still currently under a tornado warning. No change yet. Wouldn't imagine anybody is on Lake Simcoe at this hour. I certainly would hope not. But this is the time that most people, I'm hoping, will be home from work. I know a lot of people still at work at 6:30 or are in traffic right now, and they're dealing with this mess. So again, heavy amounts of rain that could cause poor visibility if you're on the highway. The hail would be a problem as well if you're in an area that is seeing a particularly strong storm, and the winds too. So this is the kind of evening where, you know, put your feet up, stay safe at home. You don't want to be out in your car if you can help it, because it's going to be a while before these storms certainly die down. Behind it though, behind this line, things are certainly calming, which is good news, because in some of these cities already hit, like Sarnia, for example, the cleanup is now happening. And when you have calmer conditions, it's a better time to start cleaning up the trees and the branches around your home. A lot of lightning on these storms as well. We've been talking about that and the danger of lightning. So again, lightning from the top to bottom with this storm. And then within the line, that's where we've been seeing some of the rotation, which has been difficult to pick out because it's been so messy, Kevin. I mean, the heavy rainfall and then rain-wrapped storms like tornadoes are even trickier, certainly to see when you're on the ground, but even with radar.
Yeah, and right now I'm thinking the main focus for any new rotation is going to be across Niagara. These cells have now moved on shore from Lake Erie, and they're still staying separate from the main line. So we have just a good cluster out over the lake still. I do like the shape of that guy, but going to be keeping an eye how these two interact. Now, I'm not overly concerned with them in terms of tornado potential, but just got to double check any rotation that could be going on within them. So if we just pull them up, no signs of green. So that is all systems go right now. Are seeing some lighter reds down on that little bit of a better shaped cell right in the middle of the lake. Hopefully the main line will catch that cell before it moves on shore along the Dunnville area. So that is good news. In terms of the cell over Barrie, let's hop up to that guy. Still, the city of Barrie, still under that tornado warning. You're certainly in the clear from the danger for that. You're just looking at some pretty heavy rain right now. I want to just kind of drop down the opacity on the radar here just so we can see a little bit of the ground underneath. So yeah, the worst of it going right over Friday Harbor right now. The bottom edge of it will catch Willow Beach and Sutton. Fox and Snake Island will both be under that as well. So keeping an eye along the shoreline here. Keswick, you will get influenced by the bulk of that heavy rain, but this is where we're going to be worrying about the strongest straight line winds. The bottom edge will clip the south shores of the main lake of Simcoe. The top edge of it will get towards McCrae Point and Mara, and then all the way from Lagoon Beach down to south side of Beaverton. We'll be looking at those winds. Again, that's still probably half an hour from now, about 7 o'clock, when we'll start to see that interacting with the eastern shores of the lake. Now, focusing on the GTA, good news for Brampton, Mississauga, Oakville, and Burlington. We do have kind of the thin, unorganized part of the line here that's going to be moving your direction. But anywhere north of the 407, kind of the headwaters, which can be a little sneakier too, just to say, like along the mouths of all the rivers that go into the GTA area, if we get the heaviest rain north of the 407 up to the Oak Ridges Moraine, that all has to flow down. And if you are going out for maybe a late evening hike along any of the rivers and you think, oh, we only got a couple millimeters of rain, it'll be fine. Well, those rivers can rise pretty quickly without notice, and that should happen just kind of coinciding with sunset, actually. So let's just play this out just to see how quickly it is moving into the west side of the GTA. So Shelburne, Orangeville, in the clear now, moving down 10 across 9 and 89. So within the next 15 to 20 minutes, the entire stretch of the 400 from Barrie to the 401 will be impacted. So that's going to slow the drive right down, and then you can probably add on another 15 minutes before it starts to impact the 404. So we'll still keep an eye on the south side of this line that has those purples, see if we can get any additional energy coming in from Lake Ontario, because again, still we've had that southerly flow off the lake, and as it interacts with that westerly flow, you can get a little bit of increased influence along those storms coming right through the heart of the GTA, Kim.
Oh boy, yeah, we're bracing for it. Some good news, Kevin. Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale are now out of the tornado warning. Aurelia is still in the tornado warning, so that's the latest. I'm glad I'm not jumping in to tell you that there are additional tornado warnings this hour, but I know that you're concerned about what's going on in the Niagara region, certainly under that severe thunderstorm warning. So there's the warned areas. Toronto, Pickering not in the warning, so East Toronto not in, but certainly north and west, southwestern Ontario as well, and then up towards Aurelia. That's where our last tornado warning is at this point in time. But again, there are a lot of areas that are being influenced by these storms, regardless if you are under a tornado warning. So severe thunderstorms in many areas across southern Ontario, and then heading into the most populated area of southern Ontario in the next little bit. So there's the line. It's very messy at this point. We've been seeing some strong storms crossing Lake Erie as well from the south and hanging on to their strength as they make their way across into the Niagara region, hoping that people were safe and heeded the warnings that we have had for the last several hours. Certainly watches were issued by Environment Canada this morning for the areas of concern, and then the warnings were issued after the fact when the storms get closer or are imminent. So warning means, okay, now it's time to get inside, and hopefully you are, because we've already seen some damage with these storms across Ontario. Hail, gusty winds down around the southwest, Lambton County, for example. Our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, went that way, got caught in one of these very big storms. Also now going to check out the damage that was done around Alliston. Sarnia had some damage, we heard from Mark earlier, and power outages too with those trees down. So this line of storms certainly has a reputation of bringing severe weather. Again, down up towards Barrie, now out of the tornado warning. This is looking at where we're expecting these storms to go, and they could split a bit so that the strongest storms go north and south, and then some areas will miss the worst of it. And again, this is what we're looking at right now as these storms make their way towards the Hamilton area, certainly into Niagara. We've got Niagara being hit in two directions, coming up from Lake Erie and then coming up from this line of storms as well. It looks like a giant mess right now. But again, if you're under that severe thunderstorm warning, you want to get indoors. It means that the storms are imminent or happening. And there's a lot of lightning on these storms as well, which can be extremely dangerous, and is why soccer practices would be canceled, and baseball as well. You don't want to take any chances with storms like these with all the lightning on them. And just to show you what Barrie looked like when there was a tornado warning over Barrie, this was what the sky was looking like. Just incredible. We've had hail with these storms. London picked up hail, some large hail at times as well. And there was damage done. I was mentioning what was going on in places like Sarnia and Alveston. That's where we were seeing most of the wind damage. Okay, with severe thunderstorms like this, you may see those bubbling clouds ahead. They are called mammatus clouds. Oh, right now, good news, no tornado warning. So all of our tornado warnings have come to an end. That means, Aurelia, you are now out of the tornado warning. You are the last to go, at least at this point in time. I don't want to say there won't be any more, but right now we have no tornado warnings in place. Now let's talk about mammatus clouds. Here is Jacqueline Whittle.
Today's Science Behind the Weather, I want to talk about mammatus clouds. They are some of the most remarkable clouds that you can see out ahead of a thunderstorm sometimes, or even at the end of a thunderstorm. So let's talk about where they're found and basically how a thunderstorm develops in general. So you have an updraft. That's where you have your unstable air mass rising, and if it condenses at the right height in the atmosphere, you'll get a cloud, and then maybe it'll grow into a thunderstorm. You have where those blue arrows are. That's called a downdraft. That's where your precipitation is going to be falling out of the storm. And if you have strong enough winds aloft, you've got winds, say, coming out of the westerly direction, it'll blow the tops of that thunderstorm head right off and kind of move it out ahead of it. And then you've got these neat little pouchy-like clouds that form under the anvil of the thunderstorm. So that's where they're found, and they can be remarkable to see from a distance. This one is backlit by the sun, but here it is. A mammatus cloud, or pouch-like clouds, typically associated with some of the strongest thunderstorms that we see in the summer season.
Okay, thank you to Jacqueline Whitall. Severe thunderstorm warnings still across much of Ontario, anywhere in red, from Orillia all the way around into the Niagara region and beyond, and otherwise severe thunderstorm watches. But the good news is no tornado warnings at this point in time in Ontario, so I'm happy to report that. And our live stream is starting to wind down a little bit because we don't have the tornado warnings. We'll continue on television, of course, to cover these storms. And I just want to show you now a compilation of what these storms have done over the last 3 hours.
Back there is a wall cloud. Got a beautiful, gigantic core, gigantic hail in there likely, but right there, that is the business end of the storm. That's the dangerous part of the storm.
Okay, so that is a look at some of what the storm has done. I know so many of you have been sending in your videos or tweeting your photos and telling us what's happening where you are, and we appreciate it. And we'll certainly continue to show your videos on the Weather Network and on all of our properties, on television, website, and our app, of course, too. So this is the latest look at the radar as these storms push east. Thankfully, no tornado warnings in place. With a couple minutes left to go, I'm going to throw it back to Kevin McKay.
Yeah, Kim, we still have a couple areas of impressive storms, but primarily going to stay north of the 407 and south of Lake Ontario. It's actually a kind of a perfect situation in terms of Toronto itself, avoiding the worst of the storms. But back just south of Kitchener there, that one cell is going to require some further watching. Of course, yeah, even if the live stream is done and we don't have any tornado warnings, we will be watching these cells closely. There is a little bit of actually almost looks like a rotating low rather than a rotating storm around air, but we'll continue to see if any of that embedded action develops into anything. It's going to be tough since everything is just there's a lot of rain, and now it's getting dark, so now's when it gets a little even scarier when you get tornado warnings, because you certainly can't see them coming. Now, south of the border, those isolated supercells, they're starting to weaken too. That's going to be the story over the next couple of hours. We've only lost about 2 degrees in our temperature. St. Catharines, Buffalo, Oshawa, out ahead of the low. So we still have a lot of warmth at the surface, and it's humid, so that's still good fuel, but we aren't in kind of the prime of all that fuel for these storms. So these will continue to weaken, but still demand some attention through the remainder of the evening. So if there is anything that's pressing or any tornado warnings that do pop up, check in on TV. We will be covering these throughout the evening and overnight right across southern Ontario. Thanks for joining Kim and myself here on the Weather Network.